Could a man's death be the key to his survival? In the blood-soaked arena of ancient Rome, death didn't just stalk the gladiators, it was their grim tutor. Every swing of a sword, every clash of shields, was a lesson learned or a fatal error. Yet, against all odds, these warriors trained relentlessly, turning their bodies into instruments of destruction, often emerging alive from the chaos of combat. How did they breathe life into the art of dying? Picture this: a warrior, muscle-bound and fierce, spins like a tornado, unleashing a barrage of blows that might as well be the beating heart of the universe. Sweat drips like molten silver. Each bruise is a story. Each scar, a trophy. But what happens when the only thing standing between glory and oblivion is a split-second decision, a twist of fate? They didn't have safety gear, cozy gym mats, or personal trainers doling out pep talks. No, these fighters had a single-minded mission: survive training long enough to enter the arena. Imagine the stakes: the life lived on the knife's edge. While you scroll through your phone in a coffee shop, sipping your almond milk latte, they were dodging death like it was a morning jog. Yet, within this savage world, a darkly humorous pattern emerges. Gladiators pushed limits, not just of endurance but of sheer audacity. They trained as if each session might be their last, because, for many, it was. What if I told you they had a twisted sense of humor about it? A gladiator might jest that the only way to test your mettle was to feel the cold grip of death breathe down your neck. Training was a dance with mortality, a macabre ballet where the audience cheered as they waltzed with fate. Imagine the behind-the-scenes chaos: whispers of sabotage, accidental deaths, and the ever-present threat of betrayal. An apprentice might cut corners, feigning injury to avoid the gauntlet, only to find himself under the watchful eye of a master who saw through the ruse like a hot blade through flesh. Would you risk your life for glory, or would you fold under the pressure? The gladiators forged alliances in blood and sweat, each day a new chapter in a story where the ink was crimson. They didn't just train, they fought each other, sometimes to the death, in a ritualistic game of survival. The victor? A few extra days to breathe. The loser? Well, let's just say he became a ghost, a barely remembered name whispered in dark taverns. But amidst the horror, the camaraderie thrived. These were not just fighters, they were brothers in arms, bound by the shared understanding that today's training was tomorrow's salvation. The thrill of battle electrified the air, sparking a twisted love for the very thing that could end their lives. Could you endure such madness? Survive the unspeakable? Or would you, too, find your name etched in the annals of history, fading like the ashes of a forgotten fire? Welcome to the gladiatorial school, where the only lesson is that death is a mere stepping stone to survival, if you dare to take the leap. Blood. The air is thick with its metallic scent, mingling with the heat of bodies pressed close in a darkened space, whispers of fear curling around every heart. In a moment suspended in time, I stand in the shadow of an ancient arena, the vast stone amphitheater looming like a predator ready to pounce. It feels alive, breathing in rhythm with the frenetic pulse of the crowd, a living, breathing monster eager for the thrill of violence. The shouts of the spectators echo like thunder, a cacophony of excitement and dread. Here, where life and death dance on the edge of a blade, I can feel the weight of history pressing against my chest. Marcus, a gladiator of considerable fame, grips his gladius tighter, knuckles white with the strain. He is a lion among lambs, forged in the fires of combat but still haunted by the ghosts of fallen friends. His mind races with memories of laughter shared over meager meals, of the warmth of camaraderie, now lost to the screams of battle. I remember the first time I tasted victory, he mutters, almost to himself, his voice trembling with a mix of pride and sorrow. How sweet it was, how intoxicating. But every victory is painted with the blood of the fallen, and as he looks out into the sea of faces, he feels their hungry gaze strip him bare. He is both idol and prisoner, the weight of expectation suffocating him. Across the sand, there stands Lucius, a rookie gladiator, fresh-faced and trembling like a sapling caught in a storm. He should be dreaming under the stars, not standing on this cursed battleground where men become monsters. His heart thrums violently, a war drum in his chest, drowning out the cheers of the crowd. "What have I done?" he whispers to the shadows, seeking solace in their embrace. The air crackles around him, charged with impending doom. He remembers the quiet of his village, the sweetness of ripe figs plucked from warm earth, the laughter of children. Now, here he is, stripped of his innocence, ready to face a fate carved in both glory and despair. And then there is Julia, a woman whose spirit burns like a wildfire against the oppressive weight of her world. She stands in the crowd, eyes fierce, heart racing with the pulse of a warrior. She remembers the haunting screams of her mother, the day they took her father away, the moment she decided to fight against the tide. Her rage is palpable, a living thing that tears at her insides, urging her to scream, to break the silence that has bound her for too long. They will see me, she vows, clenching her fists, nails biting into her palms. I will not be forgotten. The crowd roars, they thirst for blood, but her thirst runs deeper, she craves justice, a reckoning that no one else dares to seek. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows that writhe and twist like the memories of those who have fought and died here. I can almost hear them, the whispers of the past, the wails of the fallen, echoing through time. The arena, drenched in sweat and sorrow, welcomes them as if to say, you are not alone. The air crackles with an electric tension, a tapestry woven from the threads of fear, hope, and desperation. Showtime, Marcus breathes, his voice caught somewhere between a prayer and a curse. But the arena does not care for prayers, it hungers for carnage. The trumpets blare, slicing through the tension like a knife, and the gates creak open, revealing the blood-soaked sand that has claimed so many souls before. The audience erupts in a frenzy, a collective heartbeat that quickens with each passing second. Every cheer, every scream resonates within Marcus's chest. Lucius's heart stutters as he steps forward, his gladius trembling in his grip. In this moment, he is every boy who ever dreamed of adventure, and every man who has ever faced the abyss. I remember my home, he breathes, the sound of laughter echoing through the trees, but the laughter is drowned out by the roar of the crowd, by the reality that crushes his dreams beneath the weight of their expectations. In the arena, time stretches and bends, reality warping under the tension. A clash of steel against steel rings through the air like a death knell. Marcus lunges forward, a dancer spinning dangerously close to the edge of a precipice. His heartbeat thunders, a tribal drum urging him onward, but with every swing, every thrust, the ghosts of his past swirl around him, clawing at his sanity. He can feel their fingers, cold and insistent, tugging at his resolve. A moment of clarity pierces through the chaos, a fleeting glimpse of Julia in the crowd, her eyes ablaze with determination. Her spirit ignites something deep within him, he remembers they are more than just warriors, they are the embodiment of hope, of rebellion against the chains that bind them. For freedom, he roars, and the sound reverberates through the very stones of the arena, transforming fear into a battle cry. The combat swirls around Lucius as he faces a seasoned warrior, fear mixing with adrenaline, blurring the lines between life and death. Each clash echoes like an ominous clock counting down, reminding him that this may very well be his last moment. I will not go quietly, he whispers, his voice steadying with resolve. He lunges, the weight of his dreams driving him forward, a desperate plea for survival, for legacy. But the arena has its own pulse, a heartbeat that reverberates through the very walls, urging the combatants to dance a deadly waltz. The crowd's roars amplify, a tidal wave of raw emotion sweeping through, and I can feel it in my bones, the anticipation, the dread, the intoxicating thrill of violence. My heart races as I watch, caught in the storm of humanity laid bare, the worst and the best, the noble and the grotesque. With every thrust, every parry, every scream of agony or ecstasy, the origins of gladiatorial combat echo through time, a brutal dance of survival, a reflection of the human spirit ensnared in a world that thrives on spectacle and blood. It's a game of life and death, where honor and shame intertwine, and the line between hero and monster blurs into oblivion. As the dust settles and the sun dips below the horizon, the arena holds its breath, an eternal witness to the stories birthed in its sand. Within the chaos, within the pain, the fierce, unrelenting flame of humanity flickers, refusing to be extinguished. And as long as there are hearts that beat fiercely, longing for freedom, for meaning, the echoes of the gladiators will resonate, undying and relentless. They are more than warriors, they are a testament to the indomitable spirit of life itself. The clang of metal rings through the air, sharp, relentless. It pisses the stillness of dawn, a sound that threatens to shatter the very foundations of hope. I stand in the shadow of the ludus, the gladiatorial school, where sweat and blood mingle with the dust of despair. The morning light spills through iron bars, illuminating a world where dreams wither and die, swallowed whole by the insatiable appetite of the arena. A man's scream echoes, raw, primal. I remember the first time I heard it, a sound that could drive the bravest to their knees. Lucius, the fierce and brooding trainer, looms over his students like a tempest, his gaze wrought with the weight of countless battles fought and lost. He remembers every drop of blood spilled, every dream crushed beneath the heel of a sandal, the faces of those who once dared to hope for glory but instead found only the cold embrace of death. Fight! Fight for your lives, he bellows, his voice a storm that rattles bones and breeds fear. In that moment, I see them, the young men, eager yet terrified, hearts racing like trapped birds, the flicker of ambition battling against the suffocating grip of fate. Then there's Marcus, a boy with laughter still echoing in his eyes, a boy who once roamed the sun-drenched hills of his home, dreaming of adventure. Now, his world has narrowed to the confines of this brutal training, where each swing of the wooden sword feels like a countdown to oblivion. He longs for something more, yet the chains of the past bind him, anchoring his spirit to the ground. He swings and misses. The blow lands heavy on his chest, a reminder that dreams are as fragile as glass, and his left gasping, the weight of expectations pushing him down like a stone. Get up! Lucius commands, his voice a whip that cracks the silence. Pain is your ally. Embrace it. But Marcus knows pain all too well. It creeps into his bones, whispers of his father's disapproval, the shame of being sold into this life of blood and sweat for a coin. He tries to find strength inside himself, but all he feels is the chill of despair wrapping around his heart like a serpent. And then there's Talia, fierce and unyielding. She stands apart from the others, a woman forged in the furnace of adversity. Her past lies heavy upon her shoulders, a burden she bears with defiance. She swings her sword with a grace that belies the pain beneath her skin, the scars of battles fought, not just in the arena but in a world that refuses to see her as anything but a novelty. I will show them, she murmurs through clenched teeth, her spirit aflame as she strikes the wooden dummy again and again, each blow a declaration of war against the ghosts that haunt her. I will not be forgotten. The clang of metal becomes a symphony of suffering, the rhythm of despair. I watch as they train, each student a brushstroke on the vast canvas of the ludus, painted in shades of fear and ambition. They are warriors in the making, yet they are also children, still trying to find their place in a world that seems to have forgotten them. Each face reveals a story unspoken, a dream abandoned, a family lost. I see them glance toward the daylight, the promise of freedom just beyond the walls, yet shackled to a fate they cannot escape. Why fight? Marcus asks during a rare moment of stillness, his voice barely a whisper, as if speaking the question aloud would summon the gods of destiny to answer. What's the point if we just die like dogs in the arena? Talia turns, her eyes blazing with an intensity that could cut through stone. Because we are more than mere animals. We fight for our stories, for our names to be remembered long after our bodies crumble into dust. Her words hang heavy in the air, imbued with the fervor of a battle cry, yet they carry a hint of desperation. Remembered? Or forgotten? Marcus retorts, skepticism woven into his tone. The crowd cheers for blood, not for us. We're just entertainment. Lucius steps closer, his expression unreadable, the scars on his face telling tales of lost comrades and unfulfilled promises. You are more than entertainment, you are the embodiment of courage. And courage, my boys, is worth dying for. In that moment, the enormity of their plight crushes down upon them. The reality of the ludus, its walls steeped in sorrow and ambition, threatens to engulf their spirits. Each training session becomes a dance with death, every clash of weapons holds the promise of glory, but also the spectre of finality. They breathe in the dust of the past, exhale the dreams of the future, but the present is alive with the electric charge of fear and hope. A whistle pierces the air, sharper than any blade. It signals the arrival of another day, another chance to spill blood in the sand, the sweet, iron tang of combat drawing them closer, yet ripping them apart. I feel the tension in the air, palpable, thick like fog. It wraps around me, squeezing my heart with every breath they take as they prepare for what lies ahead in the heart of the arena, that brutal theater of dreams and nightmares. Time ticks forward relentlessly, each second a countdown to their destinies. Will they rise as heroes or fall as shadows, mere echoes of what once was? The school stands as a beacon of both hope and horror, a place where the human spirit is forged and shattered in equal measure. I remember the faces, the voices, the stories that curl around my thoughts like smoke. They are the ghosts of the ludus, haunting, yet vibrant, a tapestry woven with threads of blood, sweat, and unyielding desire. And just as the sun begins to dip beneath the horizon, casting long, sinister shadows across the training ground, I realize this is only the beginning. The arena looms ahead, a gaping maw waiting to devour them whole. They prepare, hearts pounding with fear and fire. The truth stands naked before them, this life is a gamble, and the stakes are higher than they can imagine. As the night falls, a new chapter unfurls, steeped in uncertainty, yet glimmering with the faintest glint of hope. The walls of the ludus echo with their resolve, and I feel their burden pressing down like a weight across my chest. This is their story, a story of warriors bound by honor, fear, and the relentless pursuit of something greater than themselves. The dread of tomorrow hangs heavy, but so too does the fire of their ambition, unquenchable, undeniable. In this world of blood and glory, the future is unwritten, waiting for the brave to step forth and etch their names into the annals of history. The gladiatorial schools breathe life into the dead, stoking the flames of courage and igniting the spark of rebellion. The story spins on, and I am left with the echo of their hearts, beating fiercely against the darkness that surrounds them. The roar of the crowd is a living thing, thrumming like a heartbeat, a monstrous pulse that rattles the very bones of the Colosseum. It feels like a beast, hungry and voracious, ready to swallow whole the life of the next man. I stand among the heartless stones, my heart a drum of dread and anticipation, my throat dry as the desert sun. I remember the moment when fear turned to fire, when the oppressiveness of the arena engulfed the air, and the shadows of the past collided with the specters of the present. "Get ready, Sander!" A voice screeches through the cacophony, a call that hangs, suspended in time, as I clutch the hilt of my gladius, its weight both comforting and crippling. The blade glimmers like a serpent under the glaring sun, and I can feel my heart quicken, the dance of life and death drawing near. And there I am, just a man, but in this swirling tempest, I am a murmured prayer, a whispered curse. I remember my hands trembling, the sweat cascading down my sides, as I glance sideways at my opponent, a Thracian named Livia, her wild eyes ablaze with a feral intensity, a fierce spirit wrapped in sinewy muscle. The Thracians are a breed apart, born of a land where the air crackles with electricity, where the hills seem to whisper ancient secrets to the wind. They wear their signature gear, a small shield and a curved sword, the sickle, sharp as a wolf's fang. Livia moves with an elegance that belies the deadly force she represents. I can see the arrogance flickering behind her gaze, the belief that she is the storm itself, a hunter among the hunted. But beneath that bravado, I catch a glimmer of fear, an echo of doubt. Even beasts tremble before the void. I remember the gladiatorial school, the stench of sweat and blood mixing with the acrid tang of fear, the very air a miasma of desperation. Men training not just for victory but for survival, for the slim hope of freedom, or perhaps just to endure another day of this madness. "Sander, be a wolf," my trainer barks at me, his voice cutting through the haze. I laugh bitterly at the irony. If only I could be a wolf, how intoxicating it would be to hunt rather than be hunted. Instead, I must become the blade itself, sharp and unyielding, ready to pierce the heart of fate. I remember the thrumming of my blood, the echo of screams, both past and yet to come. The horn blares, and we charge, a collision of gladiatorial wills. I remember the clang of metal against metal, the way it vibrates through the marrow of your bones, a raw anthem of chaos. I parry with my gladius, the edge glinting ominously as it meets Livia's sickle. Each strike, a prayer, each block, a defiance. The crowd roars, a monstrous entity, alive with the scent of blood, eager for the drama unfolding. The thrill of combat is intoxicating, a rush like nothing I've ever known, my life flashing before me, the faces of loved ones, the laughter of children, all drowned in this sea of violence. Yet, even amidst this brutality, my thoughts drift to Crassus, the murmured king of the arena, whose ambition is as insatiable as the crowd's thirst for blood. He watches, ice cold and calculating, weighing who will be the next to survive, who will find their way into the annals of glory, or death. He is more than a spectator, he is the puppeteer, with lives dangling from strings, swaying with every cheer, every gasp. Livia lunges, and I sidestep, my breath hitching with each movement. The world narrows to the point of her blade and the thumping of my heart. She is relentless, fierce as a storm, and I am but a fragile vessel, fragile but defiant. I remember the stories of the Murmillo, armored like a knight, wielding a heavy sword and towering shield, standing like a fortress against the waves of adversity. A wall of muscle, a bastion of strength. But I am no Murmillo. I am Sander, a fleeting shadow, a whisper of defiance in a world painted in blood. And then, just as the tempest seems to take me, I see him, a Rotarius, glistening in his wet tunic, his net and trident glimmering like the scales of a vengeful sea serpent. He dances around the edges, calculating, waiting, a predator lurking in the periphery. I remember his eyes, calculating, as if he's acknowledging the fragile dance of life and death. His style is fluid, a deadly ballet, a reminder that sometimes, speed outweighs strength. The crowd loves him, they love the danger he brings, the risk of being ensnared, caught in the web of fate. Then there's the murmurs of the Samnite, clad in heavy armor, a wall of unyielding strength, whose very presence turns the fight into a clash of titans. The shield is a fortress, the sword a relentless storm. But even they falter before the tides of combat, each fighter haunted by the specter of defeat. But here in the arena, it's just Livia and me, the pounding of the crowd resonating in the backdrop, a constant reminder of the stakes. I feel the air thickening, the anticipation cascading over us like a wave. And then, in a moment of clarity, a memory rushes through me, in my brother, the laughter, the warmth of family. I remember the day he fell, the way the light dimmed, the way I swore to carry his spirit into every fight. A thrust, a parry, the dance continues. Livia's breath catches, our eyes locking, and in that moment, time stretches. I see her not just as an opponent but as a reflection of my own fears, my own struggle for survival. We are bound by the same fate, two souls carved from the same stone, battling for survival in this hellish paradise. And as I draw in a breath, the world around me fades, leaving only the pulse of the crowd, the weight of my choices, and the certainty that the next clash could very well be the end. I can feel the tension rising, the electric air crackling with the promise of violence, and I know, this is but a moment in a long line of bloodshed, a mere fragment in the grand tapestry of despair. My hand tightens around the hilt of my gladius, the blade reflecting the very essence of our existence in this grotesque theatre of life and death. Each gladiator, each style, each weapon, mere symbols of our struggle against the gods of fate. And as the fight escalates, the shadows grow longer, the sun sinking lower, cloaking the arena in an eerie twilight. I remember, this is but the beginning. The dance will continue, the blood will flow, and the crowd will roar, their hunger unquenchable, their thirst for gladiatorial glory insatiable. The fight never truly ends, it simply transforms, echoing through the ages, an endless chant of survival in a world where nothing is guaranteed but death. The clang of metal echoes in the dim light, a chilling sound that reverberates through the stone walls of the ludus. The air is thick with sweat and dread, a suffocating miasma that clings to the skin like a second layer. Outside, the sun hangs heavy in the sky, indifferent to the chaos within. Inside, time slows to a crawl, each heartbeat a reminder of the stakes, each breath a silent prayer for survival. I remember the first time I saw Lucius, a fresh-faced boy with eyes wide as the sky, standing in the training yard. His pulse hammered in his throat, the weight of a wooden sword trembling in his grip. He was a wild stallion, unbroken and beautiful, blissfully unaware of the darkness creeping closer, inching toward him like a predator stalking its prey. Yet, here I was, Demetrius, the Lannister, his trainer, burdened by the knowledge that my hands would shape his fate. The thought gnawed at me, a vulture feasting on my insides. "Swing harder, Lucius!" I barked, my voice rough as gravel. "You'll find no mercy in the arena." The irony clawed at me, I was the one who trained them to fight, to kill, while knowing that the very next fight could be their last. The thought was a persistent spectre, haunting my every command. Then there was Cassia, a fierce gladiatrix with eyes like burning coals, her spirit as unyielding as the steel that adorned her body. I had trained her since she was a girl, her laughter a sweet melody that once filled the empty corners of the ludus. Now, it was a memory drowned by the blood and sweat of the arena. She practiced relentlessly, every strike against her opponent a desperate scream for recognition in a world that wanted to silence her. "You think you can kill me?" she challenged, defiance woven into every word. But I saw the cracks in her bravado, the flicker of fear hidden beneath the surface. I understood her, perhaps more than she realized. This was a dance with death, but we were partners, and I couldn't let her lead us to the grave. As I watched them spar, the clashing of wooden swords echoed like a death knell. I felt the weight of their dreams pressing down on me like a stone. "You're not just fighters," I reminded them, my tone dipping into a growl. "You are warriors." The word rang hollow, a desperate incantation. They needed more than my voice, they needed hope, something to cling to in this hell. Lucius faltered, his grip slipping, the sword falling to the ground with a thud that seemed to echo through the very fabric of the ludus. "I can't do this, Demetrius," he whispered, the tremor in his voice a crack in his facade. "I don't want to die." The rawness of his fear cut through me like a blade, and I remembered the boy I had been, standing before an unforgiving world. I felt the urge to shield him, to take him away from this nightmare. But I was the Lannister, and my heart was shackled to the brutal traditions of this life. "Listen to me," I said, lowering my voice, stepping closer. "Every swing, every bruise, it's your armor. It will make you stronger. You must fight, not just for survival, but for your place in this world." I could see the doubt etched into his features, the shadows creeping over him like a blanket of despair. In that moment, I was both his mentor and his jailer, holding him in a paradox where fear and bravery danced together. A sudden crash interrupted our moment, a reminder that the world outside our walls was feral, hungry. A rival Lannister had come to taunt us, a crooked grin plastered across his face, the stench of malice wafting through the air like a noxious cloud. "How many of your pets will you send to slaughter this week, Demetrius?" he sneered. "I hope you've been sharpening their swords." The words were daggers, sharp enough to find the soft underbelly of my resolve. In that heartbeat, I felt the universe shift, the weight of my choices crashing against me like waves against the rocks. Would Lucius die for my ambition? Would Cassie's spirit be extinguished because I pushed her too far? I swallowed hard, the bitter taste of despair flooding my mouth. I had chosen this life, had embraced the darkness that came with being a Lannister. Still, the cost of my choice was written in blood, and the ink was fresh. "Get back to your training," I commanded, but my voice wavered, torn between authority and the crushing weight of my own fears. The two of them nodded, but I saw the spark of rebellion in Cassia's eyes. She wouldn't be a pawn in this game of death. She was sick of being a piece on my chessboard, and I couldn't blame her. I turned away, seeking refuge in the shadows of the ludus, where the whispers of the past echoed through the darkness. I remembered the first gladiators I had trained, their laughter still ringing in my ears, their dreams swirling like smoke. They were ghosts now, reminders of all I had lost, all I had sacrificed. I gripped my chest, feeling the ache of memory, regret threading itself into the fabric of my being. But I also remembered the thrill, the rush of victory as their names resounded in the halls of the Colosseum. The roar of the crowd, the taste of triumph, it was intoxicating, a drug that kept me chained to this brutal life. The contradiction clawed at me. I was their guardian and their executioner, a paradox I could never unravel. "Remember, every wound is a lesson," I murmured to myself, a mantra that felt increasingly hollow. I closed my eyes, envisioning the battlefield, the clash of steel, the visceral thrill of combat. But the image morphed, twisting into a vision of blood-soaked sand, of Lucius falling, of Cassia screaming, and the haunting echo of my own laughter as I stood among the ruins of their dreams. "Demetrius!" Cassia's voice pierced the air, raw and desperate. I turned, my heart racing. She stood, poised and defiant, a warrior on the brink of war, a firestorm contained within a fragile shell. "I won't let you control me, not anymore." I am more than your weapon. In that moment, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, reality spiraling into chaos. Shadows danced around us, a prelude to the storm that loomed ahead. It was not just a battle for survival, it was a battle for freedom, for identity, for the very soul of what it meant to be a gladiator, and the fate of all of us hung in the balance, a delicate thread ready to snap. The sun hung low, a bruised orange orb bleeding its last light over the training ground, casting long, distorted shadows. I could hear the distant echo of steel clashing, a metal on metal, a symphony of violence that reverberated in my bones. Today, I felt it in my gut, a gnawing certainty that death was closer than ever. That familiar knot in my stomach tightened as I laced up my sandals, each pull a reminder of the weight I bore. Every gladiator here wore scars, but mine were not just skin deep. Reminders of lost fights, lost friends, and lost dreams. Marcus, my trainer, barked orders like a pack of wolves hungry for blood. His eyes glinted with a feral intensity beneath furrowed brows, a man sculpted by the world's cruelty. He had seen many moons in the arena, weathered the storms of 1,000 battles, yet still, he craved more. Faster! Strike harder! His voice pierced through the thick air, bouncing off the walls like a whip, snapping me to attention. I remembered my promise to myself, to survive, to not become just another name whispered in the shadows. Next to me, the towering figure of Lucius, a beast of a man with arms thicker than my torso, grunted as he lifted a heavy wooden sword, sweat glistening on his brow like oil on a blade. He was a paradox, an artist with the sword, yet a prisoner of his own fury. His laughter during breaks masked the torment he carried, the memory of a family he lost to the very empire that now demanded his blood. I saw him once, alone in the dark, whispering to ghosts that only he could hear. I remember my sister, he had said, his voice trembling like the ground beneath our feet. I remember her laughter, and how it faded. I won't let this arena take my soul too. I wanted to reach out, to comfort him, but the words lodged in my throat, heavy as a stone. We began our drills, each swing of the sword reverberating through me, a heartbeat of its own, a rhythm that matched the pounding of my pulse. I felt the heat rise in my chest, each breath a reminder that I was alive, and yet, every thrust felt like a countdown, an inevitable march toward the next fight, the next dance with death. Striking a target, I lost myself in the motion, allowing the weight of the world to dissipate even if just for a moment. Sweat dripped from my brow, stinging my eyes, and I fought back a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Again! Marcus shouted, a feral delight in his tone, pushing us like beasts to the brink of collapse. I could see the hunger in his eyes, a predator stalking its prey. He thrived on our pain, and we fed him joyfully, our bodies breaking so that our spirits could rise. The clang of our weapons, the sharp grunts of exertion, the shouts of encouragement, all converged into a single, chaotic symphony. With every slice of the sword, I felt the pull of destiny, the insistence of fate. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the aroma of bread and lentils wafted through the air, mingling with the metallic scent of sweat and blood. The kitchen was harsh in its simplicity, a grim reminder that we were not gladiators in some romanticized tale but prisoners of a system that thrived on suffering. My stomach grumbled, a low growl protesting the meager rations. I scooped a bowl, the gritty texture of the food barely registering as I forced it down, chewing in rhythm to the pulse of despair in my heart. You've got to eat, Roffy, Lucius said, his voice a rumble of thunder. You need your strength. Strength for what? Another bout? Another chance to die in front of a crowd that would cheer for blood but not understand the sacrifice. We gathered in silence, sharing stories of what our lives had been before the arena swallowed us whole. I shared my dreams, the distant memories of laughter and family, tinged with nostalgia that felt like a blade cutting deeper. The others listened, their eyes reflecting a blend of understanding and pain. I remember the fields, I mused, the way they rolled under the sun, the laughter of my brothers as we raced through the grass. Now, I am nothing but a shadow of my former self. The laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling quiet, like the calm before a storm. Rest came fitfully, a cruel mockery of respite. Our cells were cold, the stone walls a reminder of our captivity. I lay there, the weight of darkness pressing against my chest, pulling me into a slumber haunted by visions of the arena. I dreamt of blades flashing, of screams echoing, of the roar of a crowd clamoring for blood. I awoke in a cold sweat, heart racing, knowing tomorrow would bring its own horrors. Lucius was beside me, his eyes wide and wild. "Did you hear it?" he whispered, the tremor in his voice evident. "The crowd. They are hungry." As dawn's pale light crept into our cells, I could feel the tension in the air, thick as fog. Today was an execution of sorts, a reminder that life was fleeting, that glory was only a heartbeat away. I could hear the distant clang of gates opening, the grunts of men preparing for battle. Each sound echoed in my chest, a countdown to an uncertain fate. "Today," I murmured, "we fight for our lives." I could see the resolve in Lucius's eyes, the fire that burned behind the sorrow. And in that moment, we were no longer mere gladiators, we were warriors, bound by the same chains of fate, brothers forged in the fires of despair, ready to face the brutality of the arena once more, knowing that with each heartbeat, we danced on the edge of oblivion. And as I stepped into the light, the ghosts of my past whispered, urging me onward into the fray, into what lay ahead. The battle was calling, a siren song that promised glory but delivered only blood. And still, I would answer. The air is thick with sweat and the distant echo of clashing steel, a cacophony of primal sounds that vibrate through the bones. In the dim light of the training grounds, the smell of blood mingles with dust and despair, a haunting reminder of lives spent in pursuit of glory or, more likely, survival. I see Lucius, his back glistening with effort, muscles taut like coiled ropes, as he swings a wooden sword, again and again, until the weapon feels like an extension of his very soul. Each strike is a desperate plea, a prayer whispered to the gods who may be deaf to his suffering. I remember the first morning I trained beside him, the sun draped in murky clouds as if mourning the fate of men who dared to dream. My own body had been weak then, limbs unaccustomed to this life of iron and grit. But I watched Lucius, and I learned. His spirit, a firestorm of ambition, ignited something within me. I had to fight for every breath, every ounce of strength that escaped like a thief in the night. And there I stood, years later, a part of this unholy ballet, echoing his relentless rhythm as the air crackled with the promise of pain. "Faster! Stronger!" barked Gaius, our master, a towering figure carved from stone and shadow. His voice was a whip, snapping against our backs, urging us to push past the limits of what we thought possible. "You want to survive the arena? You need to become the storm." I remember staring into the dark abyss of those words, the whisper of mortality lingering like smoke in the air. Survive? The word danced around me, a grim specter. Every training day brought with it another weight, another burden, and with it the grinding reality that only one of us might emerge whole from the blood-soaked sands. Yet, I craved it, the excruciating drills, the relentless conditioning that left me gasping for air as if the very act of breathing was a privilege. There, in that crucible of despair, Lucius and I forged a bond as unbreakable as the steel we wielded. Agility was our salvation, we practiced dodging blows, our bodies twisting and turning like dancers in a macabre performance. I could feel the world collapse around us, the specter of death lurking just beyond the crimson-tinged horizon. "The key is to be unpredictable," Lucius would say, his eyes shining like embers in the dark. "A lion doesn't announce its attack, it slips into the shadows, and then, boom! It's upon you." I tried to mirror his intensity, but fear crawled through my veins like a serpent, squeezing tighter with each passing moment. And yet, the thrill of the chase was intoxicating. Every leap and lunge sent adrenaline coursing through me, an electric jolt that ignited my very spirit. I remember a day when Gaius unleashed a new training technique, a series of grueling obstacle courses that felt like an affront to all senses. We were made to sprint up hills, scale walls, and crawl through mud like vermin. With each trial, I could feel pieces of myself shatter, the echoes of my limits ringing in my ears. But Lucius, he soared. Each movement was poetry, fluid and raw. He was the embodiment of strength, a whirlwind of power and grace, his laughter mingling with the pain, a hauntingly beautiful sound that vibrated in the marrow of my bones. I was both enamored and burdened, a shadow to his brilliance, but the flame of camaraderie knit us together. In those moments, we were not mere gladiators, we were warriors of fate, carving our names into the annals of time. I remember the nights after training, when our bodies ached like old memories and the moon hung low like a watchful eye. We would sit side by side, shoulders brushing, sharing tales of our lives before this hell. The laughter would come easy, melding with the tension, but beneath it all bubbled the fear that tomorrow might separate us forever. And then there was Marcus, a beast of a man, who wore his scars like badges of honor. He had fought in the arena long before Lucius and I even knew the meaning of the word. He was the ghost of our possible futures. I watched him, a towering figure, his body a canvas of pain, as he practiced. Strength is not just measured in muscle, he would say, his voice gravelly as if scraped from the depths of despair. It's a dance with death. You must learn to lead. Every word struck me like a dagger, and I could feel the weight of it, heavy and unyielding. In those moments, I understood that physical conditioning transcended mere strength. It was a mental game, a battle against the clock, against fear, against everything that whispered defeat. With each heartbeat, I swayed between hope and despair, the lines blurring like shadows in the twilight. I remember one fateful day, as we lined up for yet another grueling session, an unsettling hush fell over the training grounds. The air thickened, pregnant with anticipation and dread. I felt the weight of Lucius' gaze on me, an unspoken challenge. Gaius stood before us, his face a mask of authority, and I could sense the storm brewing behind those stormy eyes. Today, you will face each other, he announced. One-on-one combat. You will learn that pain is your only ally. My heart raced, a wild stallion caught in the throes of fear. Lucius' grin was both a comfort and a terror as we paired off, while Marcus stood to the side, a silent sentinel, watching, waiting. The clashing of wood against wood, the grunts of effort, the sheer intensity of the struggle, it became a symphony of chaos. I was lost in the dance, a whirlwind of fear and adrenaline, and yet, as I faced Lucius, a strange calm washed over me. I remembered every shared laugh, every moment of friendship, and with that, I lunged. The world faded, leaving just the two of us in an arena of our own making. I remember the metallic taste of blood, the sharp pang of reality crashing down upon us. This was more than physical conditioning, it was a realization that life itself could be as transient as a fleeting breath, and every movement, a desperate grasp for survival. As we clashed, the shadows of our past and future loomed large, but in that moment, we were more than gladiators. We were alive, dancing on the edge of mortality, bound by the unbreakable ties of struggle. The clang of metal against metal rang out like a death knell, echoing through the dimly lit chamber, filled with shadows dancing on the walls. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and the iron tang of blood, both fresh and dried, clinging to the rough stones like a curse. It was a symphony of chaos, and in the middle stood three figures, hearts pounding like war drums. I remember the first time I held the sword, the weight of it grounding me, both a blessing and a burden. I was drawn into its grip as if it were an extension of my own body, yet it felt foreign, a whisper of danger teasing the edges of my mind. The instructor loomed behind me, a ghost of authority, his breath hot against my ear. "Let it flow through you," he instructed, his voice low and gravelly, like gravel crunching beneath heavy boots. "This isn't just a weapon, it's your lifeline." Across from me stood Zara, her fierce blue eyes burning with determination, yet trembling with fear. She'd lost her brother to the very hands that trained us, and that grief was a spectre haunting her every strike. I watched as she swung her sword, each movement a desperate dance, a plea for justice wrapped in grief. The weight of her loss hung heavy on her shoulders, and I could almost see the scar etched into her heart, a wound too deep to heal. Then there was Malik, every bit a warrior, yet crumbling beneath the weight of his own expectations. He was a prodigy, a name whispered with reverence, yet here, in this gritty sanctuary, he felt like a child lost in a storm. With each strike, he fought not just for his life but for the approval that eluded him, the ghosts of his ancestors whispering demands into his ear. I could almost see them, spectral figures hovering behind him, their faces twisted in both pride and disappointment. "Focus! You're swinging like you're trying to chop wood," the instructor barked, his frustration palpable as he paced like a caged beast, eyes flickering between us. I remember the way Zara clenched her jaw, choking down the rage, the sorrow. There was a moment, a heartbeat where silence draped over us like a heavy fog, before she lunged forward, her sword slicing through the air with a ferocity that made the instructor step back. It was raw, unrefined, but it was hers, the anger, the grief, all channeled into that single thrust. Malik followed, his movements fluid, the natural grace of a dancer masking the turmoil roiling within. But his sword faltered, clattering to the ground, a sound sharp and unforgiving, a reminder of his fragility. "Get up!" I wanted to scream, to tell him that it was okay not to be perfect, but the words caught in my throat, drowning in my own insecurities. As we resumed, the air grew thicker, tensions palpable, each breath an act of defiance. We were not just training, we were clawing our way through our own demons, the shadows of our pasts looming larger with every swing of our weapons. I swung again, and the clang reverberated into my bones, a reminder that the real battle was not against the instructor or each other. It was against the ghosts that haunted us all. Zara fell to her knees, her sword clattering beside her, and for a moment, the world stopped. I rushed to her side, breath caught like a fish struggling against its fate. "Zara," I whispered, but she shook her head, tears mingling with the dirt on her cheeks, the jagged edges of her pain exposed. "I can't do this. I can't be like him," she choked, her voice breaking like glass. "Enough," the instructor's voice cut through the air, sharp and unforgiving. "You think that your sorrow makes you weak? It does not. Own it. It's your fire, let it fuel you." His words ignited something within me, a fragile ember of hope struggling against the winds of despair. I rose, sword held high, not for the instructor, not for Malik or Zara, but for the ghosts that haunted us, the ones who had fallen, the ones we couldn't save. I remembered the faces of those I had lost, and with each swing, I channeled their memories, transforming sorrow into strength. But fear clawed at my insides, whispering the bitter truth that these lessons were not enough. In a world where blood stained the earth and souls crumbled under the weight of war, would it be enough? Would my sword ever truly protect those I loved, or was it simply a facade, an illusion that shattered with the first clash of steel against flesh? Again, the instructor barked, urgency in his tone, and we resumed. I fought through exhaustion, through the aching reminder of all that was lost, every swing a prayer for redemption. The shadows of the chamber seemed to close in, but there was a fire in my chest, a desperate need to stand tall against the encroaching darkness. Zara, rising, her gaze fierce anew, echoed the spirit of the fight, the spark of her brother's memory lighting her way. Malik found his rhythm again too, the pressure of expectations fading as he embraced the chaos around him. "Remember, it's not just about the technique," the instructor said, voice steady amidst the storm. "It's about the will to fight, the reason behind your weapon." And in that moment, in the heart of chaos, I understood. We were not just wielding weapons, we were wielding our stories, each strike imbued with the weight of our pasts, our hopes, our fears. The blades became extensions of our souls, each clash a testament to the fight within us. As the training continued, the intensity built, a crescendo of emotion and raw power, threading through the atmosphere, binding us together in our shared struggle. Each breath, each heartbeat, echoed the rhythm of our resolve, a symphony of survival. And just as we found our stride, the world outside shifted, the edge of a storm brewing beyond the shadows, tendrils of fate reaching for us, calling us into the unknown. We stood ready, hearts united in the chaos of preparation, poised to face whatever horrors awaited us, side by side, warriors forged in the fires of our own despair. The air was a frigid whisper, a shiver that crawled down my spine as I stepped onto the mat, the scent of sweat and determination mingling thickly in the stale atmosphere. There, beneath fluorescent lights, it was just us, three warriors locked in a dance of shadows, each heartbeat a drum of impending fate, the thud of our feet echoing like distant thunder. A moment of stillness, a blink of hesitation, and then the world exploded into chaos. I remember the cold touch of fear as I faced Oliver, my mentor, my rival, the embodiment of strength and stoicism. His eyes were like shards of ice, piercing through the fog of uncertainty that clouded my thoughts. He had that way of smiling, slightly crooked, filled with mischief, that made you feel like you were stepping into a trap of your own making. "You ready?" he asked, the question hanging in the air like an executioner's axe. I wasn't ready. I was never ready. I felt the weight of inadequacy pressing against my chest, a leaden cloak I couldn't shake off. I wanted to be fearless, to glide through each move like a fluid shadow. But fear has a way of clawing at your insides, twisting every thought until it becomes a snarling beast. I could feel the specter of doubt wrapping itself around my throat, squeezing tighter with every breath. And then there was Emma, small but fierce, a tempest in a tiny frame. Her laughter, ringing like wind chimes, dissolved the tension, but her eyes held the storm. I watched her warm up, her movements a blur, a symphony of muscle and grace. She had a history, a depth that twisted through her like roots in ancient earth. "I can't lose this," she'd whispered the night before, her voice barely a tremor in the dark. "It's all I have left." The mat was our battlefield, a sacred ground where personal demons were exorcised through strikes and blocks. Each jab, each parry, each feint was a reflection of our scars. I remembered my father's voice echoing in my mind, "Fight like it's your last breath." The words rattled and shook me. Training wasn't just about combat, it was about survival, a primal instinct that had haunted us all. The tension thickened, an electric charge building in the air as I squared up against Oliver, our bodies a mere breath apart. He moved with the ease of a predator, and as he lunged, I felt the pulse of adrenaline surge through me. My body reacted, muscles tensed, instincts ignited. I ducked, barely avoiding the fist that could have shattered my jaw. The thud of his punch reverberated in my bones, a warning of what was at stake. "Focus," he barked, and the world narrowed to the space between us, a taut wire stretched to snapping. I could see the whisper of a smile ghost across his lips, the thrill of the challenge igniting something dark and wild in him. It was almost intoxicating, the way he pushed me, testing my limits. Yet, with every attack, I felt the stinging reminder of my own inadequacies, the way my feet entangled like a marionette with tangled strings. Mia's laughter cut through the tension again, a splash of sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "You both look like clumsy gorillas," she teased, her own sparring session on hold. Her eye sparkled with defiance, a flicker of hope that burned in the depths of our shared struggle. But beneath her jests was an urgency, a desperate need to prove herself, to break free of her own chains. Would she crumble like the rest of us, or rise like a phoenix from the ashes? I watched her as she stepped into the ring with Oliver, two forces colliding. It was a dance, fluid and fierce, her small frame darting around him like a wisp of smoke. Every movement was poignant, a brushstroke on the canvas of chaos. But with each twist and turn, I felt my heart throb with an ache that wouldn't let go. She was stronger than she'd ever believed, but the fight was brutal, and each miscalculated blow carved deeper into her spirit. The echo of fists meeting flesh resounded in the cavernous space. I could see the tension morph into something raw and primal, a violent ballet that blurred the lines of mentorship and rivalry. I remembered Oliver's last words before we began, "Fight for something." What did I fight for? The answer eluded me, slipping through my fingers like sand. Again, he shouted, and I lunged forward, the world narrowing into a tunnel of determination and dread. Each punch I threw felt heavier, not just from the weight of my body but from the weight of expectation. The fear clawed at my throat, threatening to choke me, and yet I could feel something else rising, a flicker of strength that dared to push through the cracks of my doubt. Suddenly, Mia gasped, a sharp intake of breath as she took a hard hit. Time froze. The sound of her body hitting the mat was like a gunshot in the silence. My heart raced, a wild creature thrashing against its cage. I rushed to her side, adrenaline coursing through my veins, panic clawing at my gut. "Get up, please," I whispered, the words fumbling in the air. I felt the tears prick my eyes, the dread of loss looming like a dark cloud. She blinked up at me, a flicker of defiance sparking behind the veil of pain. "I'm fine," she breathed. But the tremor in her voice betrayed the truth. The mat was stained with sweat and dreams, a battlefield where we confronted our fears, our ghosts. We were fighting not only each other but the shadows lurking within ourselves. And as I looked into Mia's eyes, I realized we were all connected by the thread of struggle, bound by the shared weight of our pasts. "Do it again," Oliver's voice cut through the haze, a command laced with urgency. The confrontation was not just between bodies, it was a fight for our very souls, the pressing need to rise above our limitations, to confront the monsters that had taken residence in our hearts. And so we fought, each jab, each strike, each breath a testament to our resilience. It wasn't just about combat, it was a ritual to forge a new path, the shadows of our fears slowly receding in the face of tenacious hope. Trapped in this cycle, we danced on the precipice, moving closer to the edge of something monumental. As the mat swallowed our sweat and whispered promises, I felt the space between us stretch, the weight of our battles morphing into something transcendent, an unquenchable thirst for freedom, for understanding, for strength. As we faced ourselves, the fight was never truly over. The echoes of our struggles would follow us, a relentless reminder that the real battle had just begun, and as we stepped back, we were already preparing for the next round. A sharp crack echoes through the dusty training ground, metal on metal, a chorus of clashing swords ringing like a death knell. It reverberates in my bones, a reminder of the fragility of flesh facing the unforgiving edge of steel. I am Marcus, a gladiator, and I stand in the midst of chaos, grappling with the weight of survival that clings to my chest like a leaden shroud. Across from me, Gaius lunges, his eyes a storm of determination, yet shadowed by the spectre of fear. He swings his gladius wide, and I duck just in time, the blade slicing through the air where my throat had been only a heartbeat ago. I remember the old trainers telling us, a gladiator is a dancer, the arena is his stage. But I can't dance when every misstep could lead to a tragic finale. Focus, the trainer bellows, his voice a whip cracking through the tension. I can see the sweat glistening on Gaius's brow, gliding down like the sands of time slipping through an hourglass. We're young men, hungry for glory but haunted by the looming spectre of injury that lurks behind every strike. We've heard the whispers of comrades being carted off, their bodies broken, dreams crushed under the weight of reality. Stay light on your feet, I remind myself, echoing the mantra I repeat to drown out the gnawing dread. Each lunge, each parry, is a desperate act of defiance against the inevitable. I can see the scars on Gaius's arms, evidence of battles fought, each mark tells a tale of survival, a testament to the unyielding spirit of those who face death. We train with a ferocity fueled by fear, fear of becoming another ghost that haunts the Colosseum, another name carved into stone, a grim reminder of fleeting glory. Our trainers use wooden swords and padded armor, but even in this brutal ballet, injuries are a familiar companion, lurking just beyond the flicker of a torch's flame. I remember the scent of liniment, sharp like betrayal, used to soothe the aches that come with our relentless training. Ancient herbs mixed with animal fat, the concoction is a lifeline, an offering to the gods of recovery, a prayer to avoid the butcher's block. But it is not just the herbs that hold us together. Darius, a master of healing and a former gladiator himself, walks among us, a ghost of glory past. His hands are steady, his presence a balm. I recall watching him tend to a fallen brother, a shoulder dislocated, blood pouring like a crimson river. Darius worked with a calmness that belied the chaos around him, resetting bones with an ease that made it seem like magic. Pain is temporary, honor lasts forever, he whispered to the wounded man, his voice a soothing balm, a mantra that binds us all. It's this belief that fuels our resolve, to train harder, to fight smarter, to prevent the injuries that come like thieves in the night. We wrap our hands in torn cloth, a crude form of protection, and learn to roll with the blows, to fall like grains of sand rather than shatter like glass. We've crafted a language of avoidance, feints and dodges, techniques honed until they flow like water. I remember the lessons, the best strike is the one that never lands. Every training session is steeped in survival strategies, anticipating the unexpected, mitigating the risks, seeking the angles where pain cannot reach. With each clash of swords, I'm reminded of the thin line we walk, a dance on the precipice of agony. I glance at Gaius, our eyes locking for a fleeting moment, and in that exchange, I see our shared resolve. We're not just fighters, we're brothers, forged in the fires of struggle, united by the understanding that this life is a fragile thread, and one misstep can unravel it all. But beneath the bravado lies a darker truth, the spectre of despair. I remember the night when whispers of a failed gladiator echoed through the halls. He had slipped in training, a moment of carelessness that cost him everything. The agony of that memory hangs heavy in the air, a reminder that every day could be our last. Keep your spirit strong, Darius would say. The mind is the fiercest weapon. His words coat the air like a thick fog, enveloping our fears, urging us onward. We train in the shadows of the past, but the future is a vast, uncharted territory, with every heartbeat resounding like a war drum. And then it happens, a miscalculated step, a split-second lapse in concentration. Gaius lunges, and this time, I am not quick enough. The blade grazes my arm, sharp and searing, pain radiating like fire. I stumble back, the world tilting. Marcus! Gaius cries, rushing to my side, panic-etching lines on his face. But even in the haze of pain, I catch a glimpse of Darius moving swiftly through the throng, his hands poised for action. With a steady touch, he pulls me back from the abyss, wrapping my arm with a practiced ease. Breathe, brother. Pain is just the beginning of recovery. His voice, a lifeline in the storm, grounds me. The world blurs, the clamor of swords fades into a distant echo as I focus on the rhythm of my breath, the rise and fall, the pulse of life. In this moment of crisis, I am no longer just a gladiator, I am a man anchored by hope and defined by my scars. Gaius watches, his own fears reflected in the storm of my eyes. We are all haunted by the specter of our own mortality, yet driven by the desire to emerge from the darkness into the light of victory. This is not just about avoiding injury, it is a dance with fate, a testament to the human spirit's indomitable will to rise, to fight, to survive the unforgiving arena of life. The air crackles with unspoken promises, a fierce resolve binding us in a relentless pursuit of glory, not just for ourselves but for each other. As the memory of pain fades, a deeper understanding settles in, that true battle lies not just on the sands of the arena, but in the hearts we forge, the bonds we create. We are gladiators, yes, but we are also so much more, we are warriors of the spirit, rising from every fall, ready to face whatever shadows await in the night. And as the sun dips low, casting long shadows over the ground, I can feel the weight of tomorrow pressing down, the promise of battles yet to be fought, the inevitability of pain, and the unquenchable thirst for honor. With every breath, we inch closer to that reckoning, ready to embrace the chaos, the beauty, and the visceral truth of our existence. The air is thick, oppressive, a silence that clings like sweat on skin. A heartbeat reverberates through the ground beneath me, a steady drum that drowns out the distant roars of the crowd, a reminder of life beyond this moment. I remember the first time I stood in the arena, a trembling figure dwarfed by the weight of expectation and fear. I was nothing then, just a boy with a wooden sword, an illusion of power in a world where death danced like a lover in the moonlight. Now, I'm a man, forged by fire and blood, but the demons whisper still. In the shadows, I see him, Lucius, my closest friend and fiercest rival. His eyes blaze with a mix of fury and despair. A single drop of sweat rolls down his temple, tracing a path to his clenched jaw. I remember his laughter, the way it filled the empty spaces between our brutal training sessions, a momentary reprieve from the grim reality of our fate. But today, the laughter is gone. Instead, there's a tension that hangs between us, thick enough to slice through with a sword. He's been struggling with the weight of his own ghosts, haunted by memories of the loved ones he left behind. "What do we do?" he asks, his voice a low growl. I take a breath, letting the air fill my lungs, almost tasting the iron tang of fear. "We fight," I reply, but the words feel hollow. It's more than just the physical combat, it's the mental warfare that grips our souls, the endless battle against the self. To be a gladiator is to dance upon the edge of madness, to whisper secrets into the void and hope the darkness doesn't listen. In this life, where every moment is borrowed from the grave, mental preparation is as critical as the swing of a blade. We are taught to envision our opponents, to strip away their flesh and see the heartbeat within. Every clash, every spark of steel, it's a dialogue, a chaotic conversation between life and death, determination and despair. But that conversation starts long before the gates open, before the crowd erupts into a cacophony of bloodlust and revelry. It begins here, in the haunted corners of our minds. And then there's Cassia, the fierce woman who defies the very standards of this brutal world. I often find her in the early mornings, practicing her moves beneath a shroud of silence, her body a fluid melody of grace and power. But even her fierce exterior cannot mask the scars of loss etched deep in her heart. I catch her eyes flickering with a sorrow that threatens to engulf her. I fear I will break, she confesses one day, her voice quaking with vulnerability. What if I falter before them? Then don't, I say, my voice sharper than I intend. The words hang heavy, steeped in the truth that we are all mere mortals, dancing on the strings of fate. But I see the flicker of determination ignite in her gaze. Her flaws are tangled with her strengths, her shadow is the very thing that makes her shine. In the days leading to the fight, sleepless nights stretch before us like an endless chasm. I remember lying awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the cosmos pressing down on my chest. What if I lose? What if I disappoint them all? The questions swirl around me like vultures, circling, waiting for the moment of weakness. I try to focus, visualizing the arena, the sun glaring down like a judgmental deity. I can hear the crowd, their wild chants roaring like an approaching storm. They want blood, they want spectacle. They crave the chaos that comes with our desperation. And yet, amid that chaos, strategy becomes our lifeline, a fragile thread that winds through the madness. I see Lucius, his fists clenched, the tension vibrating off him like a taut bowstring. We cannot let them see us break, he mutters, not just to me but to himself, the mantra echoing through the minds of every gladiator. We must be unyielding. Unyielding, I repeat, the word a dagger lodged in my throat. But the truth is, I feel the cracks forming, the fissures that threaten to swallow us whole. We're not just fighting for glory, we're grappling with our own mortality. We're warriors, yes, but also children terrified of the dark. As dawn breaks, a new day unfurls before us, drenched in hues of crimson and gold. The sun spills over the horizon like spilled wine, and with it comes the weight of our impending fate. Every moment ticks by like a countdown, a clock of inevitability that thrums in sync with our racing hearts. In the arena, I can almost taste the anticipation in the air, a bittersweet elixir that heightens my senses. I see the shadows dance across the sand, a reminder that death is an ever-watchful companion. My pulse races, the rhythm of my heart pounding in my ears, drowning out everything else. I remember Cassia's fierce gaze, the way she faces her fears head-on. It fuels me, ignites a fire within that I never knew existed. But the echoes of doubt still linger, whispering that I am not enough. That we are not enough. I can feel Lucius beside me, his presence a balm to my fraying nerves. We'll face them together, he says, and in that moment, I understand, this is more than just a fight. It's our legacy, our testament to resilience. And so, as the gates creak open, spilling us into the blinding light, I remind myself, it's not just the weapon in my hand that will determine my fate, but the ferocity of my spirit, the strength of my mind. I take a deep breath, letting it fill my lungs, feeling the power coursing through me. The crowd roars like a beast awakened, and I step forward into chaos, heart pounding, mind racing, ready to become something more than flesh and bone. The confrontation is upon us, a collision of wills and souls, and in that moment, everything else fades away. The battle within is as fierce as the battle without. Every decision, every strategy, resonates through me like a song, a haunting melody of survival that weaves us together in this dance of death. And as the sun casts long shadows across the blood-soaked arena, I know, this is just the beginning. The fight for our minds, our spirits, will continue long after the last blade has swung and the final breath has been drawn. We are gladiators, but we are also human, struggling against the tide of our own fears, and in that struggle, we find our true power. The sun hung low, a fiery orb bleeding into the horizon, casting long, melancholic shadows over the dusty arena. The air thrummed with a cacophony of distant cheers, the haunting echoes of a life lived on the edge of a blade. I sat there, heart pounding, adrenaline weaving through my veins like a vice, observing the gladiators as they prepared for battle, warriors forged not just by steel but by the very essence of their diet, the sustenance that fueled their ferocity. There was Magnus, towering and bone-tired, the weight of expectations heavy on his broad shoulders. I could see the fatigue etched into his brow, yet there was fire in his eyes, a flicker of defiance against the inevitable. He was not just a fighter, he was a survivor. And there was Livia, smaller but fierce, all sinew and spirit, her fists clenched and jaw set. She stood apart, a tempest wrapped in skin, her gaze fixed on the ground as if it were the only thing anchoring her to reality. They both knew that the next breath they took could be their last, a bittersweet reminder of the fragility of life in the arena. In the flickering light of the dying sun, they gathered around a modest table, a hodgepodge of earthy ingredients laid out before them. There was barley, coarse and unrefined, still bearing the scars of the earth. There were legumes, a humble bounty that felt almost like a cruel joke amidst the grandeur of their violent existence. They were warriors, yet their sustenance was born of the land, simple, unadorned, yet vital. I remember the first time I tasted barley, Magnus said, a wistful smile ghosting his lips. I thought it was the end. Why eat what feels like dirt? The laughter that followed was a bitter, throaty sound, a desperate attempt to mask the fear clawing at their insides. In that moment, the irony of their situation wrapped around me like a shroud. These gladiators, champions of blood and sweat, were sustained by a diet that whispered of humility. Livia leaned in, her voice a low murmur, a secret spilling into the twilight. It's not just food, it's our armor. We consume it to become. There was a vulnerability in her admission, a chink in her carefully crafted facade. Each mouthful was a promise, a pact with the universe. The more they ate, the more they transformed from mere mortals into legends, their bodies hardened by the very grains that once felt so foreign. They supplemented their diet with meats, but not the lavish cuts one might imagine. The offal, the scraps, the leftovers of a society that reveled in gluttony while they clawed for survival. Every piece of liver, every tough sinew was a reminder of their place in a world that demanded everything and offered little in return. I could see the tension flickering between them, a shared understanding that food was more than mere sustenance, it was a lifeline, a bond forged in the crucible of their existence. I remember, Magnus's voice trembled, a fissure of emotion cracking his bravado. I remember the taste of defeat. The taste of blood in my mouth when I lost so much more than a match. When I lost my brother. The silence that followed was thick, a palpable entity that settled over us like fog. Livia's eyes glistened, and for an instant, I saw the battle she fought not just in the arena but within her own heart. Each meal is a rebellion, Livia interjected, her voice sharp as a blade. We eat to become something greater than ourselves, to reclaim what the world tries to take away. She swallowed hard, the weight of her words hanging in the air like the scent of impending rain. We consume for our history, for the scars of those who came before us, and for those who will follow. Tension crackled as they shared a glance, a silent understanding that this was their reality, their bodies sculpted by the unyielding demands of survival. With each bite, they forged a bond deeper than blood, a shared purpose that transcended the brutality of the arena. Memories of past battles lingered like phantoms, ghosts of warriors lost to the insatiable hunger of the crowd. As the sun dipped lower, the world around them darkened, the shadows growing long and ominous. The whispers of the crowd swelled, a distant roar that promised both glory and despair. I could feel the weight of their choices, the burden of each grain consumed, each scrap savored, a dance of life and death played out in the flickering twilight. But it was not just about what filled their bellies, it was the ritual of it. The way they prepared their meals, the shared laughter over a pot of stew, the camaraderie that blossomed in the firelight while the world outside threatened to devour them whole. Each moment was a heartbeat, a staccato rhythm of survival in a world determined to see them fall. In that final moment before the clash of steel and the cries of the damned, they stood on the precipice of eternity. I could almost taste the anticipation, the electric charge in the air, thick with the promise of what was to come. They were not just gladiators, they were poets of pain, artists of ambition, their diets a complex tapestry woven from the threads of desperation and dreams. And as the trumpets blared, a death knell echoing through the air, I knew this was only the beginning. The arena awaited, and with it, a world that demanded blood for glory, a cycle that would continue as long as the sun rose and fell, leaving behind echoes of their sacrifice that would haunt the sands long after they were gone. The clang of steel rings out, a bone-jarring symphony that echoes through the dimly lit training hall. Breath quickens, hearts race, and sweat glistens like tears on the foreheads of men who wear scars as badges of honor. In the corner, I see Marcus, his fists clenched, a storm brewing behind his eyes. He is a titan among men, yet in this moment, he is a boy lost in the shadow of his fate, grappling with despair. I remember his laughter, that wild, reckless joy that could ignite a room. But today, it's swallowed by the weight of expectation, the suffocating grip of community, a brotherhood that demands more than just blood. Fight! The command splits the air, a crack of thunder that jolts us into motion. And as the clash of swords begins, I can't help but think of Lucius, my closest friend, a gentle giant who handles steel like a painter caresses his brush. Once, he told me he fought not for glory, but to protect the fragile thread that weaves our lives together in this brutal tapestry. But here, in this crucible of skill and might, love and loss become tangled, and every swing of the sword feels like a dance on a taut wire, suspended between life and death. I remember the first time I saw Lucius train. He moved with a grace that defied his size, each step a deliberate choice, a prayer to the gods that he might survive another day. Yet now, his brow is furrowed with doubt, his movements sluggish. We are warriors bound by an unbreakable bond, yet the burden of community sits heavy upon his shoulders. The whispers of the other gladiators stab deeper than any blade. They speak of loyalty and betrayal, of the price of failure. I can smell the burning flesh of sacrifice in the air, and it makes my stomach churn. Focus, Lucius! I shout as I watch him falter against the relentless onslaught of a training partner. There's no room for hesitation here, no comfort in familiarity. The community demands perfection, and in this world, failure is unforgiving. His eyes flicker to me, a fleeting moment of understanding, a shared heartbeat that reminds us we are not alone in this hell. But the fear in his gaze cuts deeper than any wound, and I wish I could shield him from the truth that in the arena, survival often comes at the cost of friendship. Blood spills, glistening under the flickering torches, and I feel the weight of it, like a stain on our souls. This isn't just physical, it's psychological. The training hall becomes a stage where camaraderie is forged amidst the clangor of blades and the adrenaline of competition. We are soldiers in an unending war, and each clash is a reminder of our shared fate. The bonds we form are threads that connect us, yet they also tie us down, trapping us in a bitter cycle of loyalty and betrayal. I recall a night under the stars, the air thick with the scent of sweat and desperation, when we shared our dreams. I want to be a champion, Marcus had said, eyes gleaming with ambition. To see my name etched in history. But I knew the truth, the arena had a way of consuming those dreams, of twisting them into nightmares. Now, as I look at him, I see the fire dimmed, replaced by a soul crushed under the enormity of expectation. In this community, triumph is celebrated, but failure? It's a ghost that haunts your every step. The other gladiators move like wolves, circling, always calculating. Rivalries simmer beneath the surface, and I can feel the tension building like a storm on the horizon, ready to erupt. It's a cruel twist of fate, the shared struggle creates bonds, but it also births envy, resentment, and fear. I see it in the eyes of those who once called each other brothers, now driven by the primal instinct to survive. The line between ally and adversary blurs, and it terrifies me. Strike harder! The instructor bellows, and the echoes of his words rebound off the stone walls, reverberating in the chests of every man present. I watch Lucius fall again, this time not just to the sword but to the weight of expectation that seems to crush him from within. I want to scream, to throw myself into the fray and shield him from this madness. But I know that here, in this unforgiving world, even kindness can be a weapon. The community thrives on suffering, a twisted symbiosis where pain is currency. Each bruise, each cut, binds us together, but it also tests our resolve. We are united in the fight, yet divided by the fear of failure. I remember Marcus's face, a storm of rage and despair, as he realizes that in this arena, love and loyalty can shatter in an instant. "What if I fail?" he whispered to me once, that vulnerability clawing at the edges of his bravado. What if, indeed? The weight of our community is binding, and I feel its grasp tighten around my throat. It suffocates, yet it also gives us strength, an unyielding reminder that we are alive, that we matter in this brutal existence. I can see it in Lucius's eyes as he rises again, defiance coursing through his veins. "I will not be broken," he seems to say, and I feel the air shift, tension coiling like a serpent ready to strike. As the training continues, the stakes rise. The air crackles with anticipation, a charged atmosphere that promises chaos. Lucius's resolve hardens, and Marcus's ambition reignites, a fire tempered by fear, but still burning. I stand on the sidelines, a spectator in this relentless dance of fate, my heart pounding, each beat echoing the complexity of our lives, the intensity of our struggles, the fragility of our bonds. And as the final clash of swords rings out, reverberating in the depths of my soul, I know this moment is merely a prelude, a haunting echo of what's to come. The community we've forged is both our salvation and our curse, and the arena awaits, a stage for our greatest triumphs and darkest fears. I can feel the looming shadow of the Colosseum, a reminder that here, in this brutal world, we are defined not just by our victories, but by how we navigate the storm of each other's hearts, fears, and dreams. The breath catches in my throat, the tension thickens, and I realize that the true battle is not just against our foes, but against ourselves, against the very bonds that tie us together in this visceral theater of life and death. The fight continues, unrelenting, as we prepare to face not just the enemy in the arena, but the demons that lurk in the corners of our own minds. The clang of metal echoed through the cold, damp air like a death knell, a sound that both thrilled and terrified. I stood in the shadows, heart pounding, breath catching in my throat, as Xanth faced her opponent. The arena loomed like a hungry beast, walls steeped in blood-soaked memories. The crowd roared, a tide of voices crashing against my ears, yet all I could hear was the rhythmic thud of her heart, pulsing in time with the clash of her sword. Xanth was a warrior forged in the fires of despair and ambition. I remember the way her hands trembled as she gripped her sword, the blade gleaming under the flickering torches that lined the stone walls. Fear mixed with determination danced in her eyes, the flickering shadows revealing the scars of her past, remnants of a childhood spent in the grip of poverty, where the only escape from the relentless grind of survival was the dream of glory in the arena. "I'm not just a woman," she whispered fiercely to herself, "I am a gladiator." Across the sand, her opponent, a towering figure, muscles rippling like storm clouds, grinned with a brutality that made my skin crawl. The air thickened with the weight of unspoken histories, of women like Xanth who had fought to carve their names into the annals of forgotten legends. Each strike, each parry was not just a battle of bodies, it was a rebellion against the chains that bound them, the chains of society's expectations, of being viewed as less than human, less than fierce. I remember the first day I met Xanth, the day she stumbled into the training yard, a wild fire in her eyes but uncertainty lacing her every step. She had walked into a world of hardened warriors, of men who believed that the arena was their domain alone. The other gladiators, wary and rough, eyed her as if she were a ghost, an uninvited spectre. But Xanth was undeterred, driven by a yearning that coursed through her veins like molten lava. Then there was Kayla, her closest friend. Kayla was the calm to Xanth's storm, a voice of reason with a heart as fierce as the sun. "You have to find your strength," she would say, her words like a balm to Xanth's raging spirit. But even Kayla battled her own demons, haunted by a past that whispered cruelly in her ear, a family torn apart by bloodshed and betrayal. Each night, she would stare into the flickering flames of their meager campfire, the shadows dancing on her face like phantoms, and I could see the weight she carried. "What if I'm not enough?" she would murmur, the fear lacing her voice, twisting a knife in my gut. Yet, within the confines of that gritty training yard, there was an unspoken bond, one that transcended the physicality of combat. Every bruise, every cut was a testament to their shared struggle. They were united in pain and resilience, a sisterhood forged in the crucible of adversity. They fought not just for survival but for a future, one that had been denied to generations before them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the training yard in a haunting orange hue, I felt the tension pulse like a living thing. The light flickered, shadows elongated, and I could sense the impending confrontation. Xanth was panting now, sweat streaking her dirt-smudged face, her muscles screaming with every swing. "I can't," she gasped, doubt creeping in like a thief in the night. "Stop thinking!" Kayla shouted from the sidelines, her voice sharp, cutting through the haze of fear. "Fight! You are stronger than this. Remember why you are here." Xanth's eyes blazed with defiance as she swung her sword again, the motion fueled by a desperation I knew all too well. Every time she faltered, I felt the sting of her failure in my own gut. But then, something shifted. With an almost primal roar, she lunged forward, the world around her blurring into a whirlwind of colors and sounds. I could see the fierce determination transforming her, a phoenix rising amidst the ashes of doubt. But then, a brutal clash, a sound that shattered the air. I held my breath as she stumbled back, the impact resonating through the ground. Her opponent advanced like a predator, and I felt a visceral jolt of fear. Would this be the moment that broke her? "Look at me." Kayla's voice sliced through the chaos, slicing the tension like a knife. "You belong here. You are more than what they say. You are a warrior." The words wrapped around Xanth like an embrace, infusing her with a fire that ignited her very core. From the ashes of fear rose a fury, and in that instant, she turned her gaze upon her opponent with a ferocity that made the air crackle with energy. Every nerve in my body sang with anticipation as she lunged forward, the blade moving with a grace born of necessity, of the countless hours spent in training, of the shared laughter and tears. The battle became a blur of movement, a dance of survival, and I felt as if time had ceased to exist. Each swing of the sword was not merely a physical act, it was a declaration of identity, a reclaiming of self, a statement that echoed through the ages, the voice of every woman who had fought to be seen, to be heard, to be free. I could feel their spirits rising with each clash, urging Xanth on, a chorus of forgotten dreams and unyielding hope. In that moment, I understood that their struggle was not just for the glory of the arena but for every woman who had ever been told she was less, who had ever felt the suffocating weight of silence. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that whispered the stories of those who had come before, gladiators in their own right. Time slowed as Xanth faced her opponent, the crowd roaring like a tempest around her. And as steel met steel, there was a haunting beauty in the air, a sense of destiny intertwining with fear, the echoes of countless battles reverberating through the very fabric of existence. In that arena, filled with ghosts of past and futures unwritten, the fight was never just about survival. It was a rebellion against the very nature of fate, a dance with destiny that dared to challenge the cosmos itself. I felt my heart thunder with every pulse of that moment. Would they break the chains? Would they rise against the tide? I couldn't look away. The world outside became a mere whisper against the cacophony of courage and fear, of dreams woven into the fabric of a fight for more than just life. It was a fight for recognition, for freedom, for a chance to carve their names into the stone of history, one swing, one clash, one heart-stopping moment at a time. The crowd buzzed, a living organism pulsing with raw energy, their voices a cacophony of hopes and fears. With every heartbeat, the tension thickened like fog, unyielding and electric. I stood in the shadowy corner of the arena, the scent of sweat and anticipation heavy in the air, each breath a reminder of the stakes. Tonight, it wasn't just blood that would spill, it was dreams, identities, and the very essence of what it meant to fight in a world hungry for spectacle. There was a moment, the heartbeat before the chaos, where everything froze. I could see Marcus, fists clenched, staring at the ring, his eyes burning with a fury that told stories of 1,000 betrayals. Once the golden boy of our clan, the one who could dance on the canvas like a whisper in the night, he had transformed into a savage beast, molded by the relentless pressure of expectations. "You're not just fighting for yourself anymore," I remember him saying, his voice a strangled whisper under the roar of the crowd. "You're fighting for them." His gaze flickered to the audience, to the faces that needed heroes, that craved the thrill of battle, the high of victory. And then there was Ava, a warrior forged in the crucible of 1,000 fights, whose grace belied the tempest raging within. She moved like a shadow, slipping between the cracks of light, her persona, a mask of confidence that barely concealed the wounds of her past. Her heart was a battlefield, torn between who she was and who the crowds demanded her to be. "Fight like a goddess," they chanted, but beneath the weight of their adulation, I saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. In their quest for entertainment, they had stripped her of her humanity, reducing her to a character in their twisted theater. "Tonight, you'll be a star, or you'll break," she had told herself in the mirror, the reflection staring back, a ghost of who she once was. I remember the way her hands trembled as she laced up her gloves, each tug tight against her skin like a noose. The arena pulsed with anticipation, the lights dimming, shadows stretching long and ominous. It would be a spectacle, a dance of violence, a clash of egos, and all of us were trapped in its gravitational pull. As the bell rang, a sound that sliced through the air, slicing through moments and memories, Marcus lunged forward like a comet streaking across the sky. Each punch was an explosion, a thunderclap against the fragile silence of our lives. With every strike, the crowd roared, a primal surge that washed over us, intoxicating and terrifying. Their cheers turned to gasps, breaths caught in throats as the fighters became a blur of motion, a ballet of brutality. I could see the struggle within Marcus, a man torn apart by the very thing that made him a legend. The expectation was a weight he couldn't bear, a chain that tethered him to a role he never chose. His fists, once instruments of joy, now hammered down with desperation, a dance that teetered on the edge of madness. "They want you to bleed, Marcus. They want you to break," the words echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder of the truth we often ignored. Ava dodged, weaved, countered, her movements a haunting melody against the discord of violence. She fought not just against her opponent, but against the ghosts that haunted her, memories of past failures and the crushing burden of perfection. The arena erupted with shouts of encouragement and disdain, a tide of emotion that threatened to drown her. "You're a goddess, Ava! Show them!" But inside, she wrestled with shadows, the fear of not being enough clawing at her insides. I remember the moment it all shifted. The crowd, once unified in their frenzy, gasped as Marcus stumbled, a hit to the jaw that threatened to unravel him. The roar turned to a deafening silence, the kind that suffocates dreams, leaving only echoes of hope in its wake. He faltered, teetering on the brink of despair, while the audience held their breath, their expectations heavy and cruel. "This is your moment, Marcus. Don't let them down." But who was he fighting for? The crowd or himself? The line blurred in the heat of the moment, and I could see it, a flicker of realization in his eyes, a question that hung unspoken. Then, Ava struck, a sudden movement, feral and fierce. She launched herself into the fray, each hit a note in a symphony of chaos. The arena ignited, a conflagration of energy that threatened to consume us all. The stakes were high, the price of failure steep, and yet, in that moment, I saw clarity in her eyes. "I fight for me," she seemed to say, and with each punch, she clawed back her identity, reclaiming the shadow that had once danced just out of reach. The battle raged on, a spiral of flesh and fury, and I was left breathless, caught in the storm of their struggles, their triumphs, and their heartbreaks. I felt the weight of their burdens, the suffocating expectations that twisted their hearts into knots. This was more than just a fight, it was a reflection of everything we yearned for, everything we feared. The spectacle we created, the personas we wore, they were both shields and shackles, gorgeous and grotesque. And as the final bell rang, echoing like a death knell through the arena, the crowd erupted again, a tidal wave of emotion crashing against the shores of our reality. But I could see the cracks in their armor, the fragility of their victories. The applause masked the scars beneath, the ones that could never heal. Marcus and Ava, warriors of a brutal ballet, had danced to the whims of an audience that loved them for the fight but despised them for their vulnerability. I remember the silence that followed, a haunting stillness that lingered in the air like smoke from a dying fire. The crowd, hungry for spectacle, had found their heroes, but at what cost? The shadows of their expectations loomed large, stretching beyond the ring, twisting their identities like vines around a tree. The fight was over, but the battle within had only just begun. In that moment, as I watched them, standing tall yet trembling, I knew we were all fighters in a world that craved a show, a spectacle. And in our hearts, we carried the weight of that expectation, a burden that could either shatter us or set us free. The line between victory and defeat blurred, leaving us all searching for meaning in the chaos, for purpose in the spectacle that defined us. As I stood in that arena, I felt the echoes of their struggles linger long after the lights dimmed, a haunting reminder that the fight was never just about the victory, it was about the souls we lost along the way. A hush fell over the arena, thick and heavy, wrapping itself around the gathered crowd like a suffocating embrace. Silence stretched taut, pregnant with expectation, while the sun dipped low, casting a sinister glow on the ground. Amidst the throng, I stood, heart pounding, breath shallow, my skin prickling with sweat and fear. This was it. The moment when preparation collided with performance, the crucible where dreams turned into nightmares. I shifted my weight, the leather of my boots creaking, a sound that echoed louder than the roar of the audience. I looked to my left. There was Marcus, a mountain of a man with a heart that beat louder than thunder. His hands trembled, fingers twitching as they gripped the hilt of his sword. Marcus would fight for glory, for honor, but beneath that bravado, I sensed the ghost of doubt lurking in his chest. I remembered the last bout, how he had faltered when his opponent had lunged. The shame still hung over him like a shroud. And then there was Lila, fierce and sharp like a blade, eyes glinting with an intensity that would have burned the weak-hearted. She was a force of nature, but that fire was fed by fear, the gnawing anxiety that she would never be enough. I could see it in the set of her jaw, the way she held her breath, as if fearing the weight of expectation would crush her. I remember the time she had stumbled in practice, the way the laughter of our peers cut into her like a knife. It was a wound that had never properly healed. "Focus," I whispered, though my own voice trembled. "Don't let them see you bleed." But in that moment, I felt the weight of my own insecurities pressing down like an invisible chain. The announcer's voice boomed, slicing through the silence, and the crowd erupted into a cacophony of cheers and jeers. The air crackled with raw energy, the scent of sweat and anticipation tangling in my nostrils. I could feel the pulse of the crowd, their hopes, their dreams, their bloodlust. They weren't just coming to watch us, they were coming to devour us. A signal cut through the noise, a flash of red, a call to arms. My heart raced, each beat a war drum. Marcus and Lila stepped forward, their shadows flickering like flames in the fading light. I hesitated, caught in the web of my own fear. What if I fell? What if I let them down? The thought haunted me like a ghost, whispering insidious doubts into my ear. But there was no time to dwell. With a surge of adrenaline, I stepped into the arena. The ground beneath me felt alive, trembling with the weight of 1,000 eyes. Every heartbeat echoed my past, every failure, every moment of weakness, and every time I had dared to dream. The crowd surged, a tide of noise threatening to drown us in its ferocity. Lila moved first, her sword slicing through the air with a grace that sent shivers down my spine. She danced, a feral cat, hunting for the thrill of victory but haunted by the specters of her failures. Each strike was poetry, each parry a promise, but I also saw the fear lurking in her eyes. What if this was the match that revealed her weaknesses? What if she faltered again? Marcus followed suit, powerful and unyielding. His strikes were blunt, overwhelming, yet somehow, they carried the weight of desperation. Each swing seemed to scream, "I am strong. I am worthy." But I knew that strength was as fragile as glass. I remembered when he had lost that last match, the wide-eyed horror on his face as the crowd turned from adulation to scorn. And me? I was the ghost, the shadow. I had sworn to be brave, to stand tall like my companions, yet every thrust of their swords dug into my soul, reminders of my own inadequacies. I had trained under the same sun, bled in the same dirt, yet doubts gnawed at the edges of my resolve. What if I failed them? What if I became a mere echo of their greatness? The first clash, steel against steel, shattered the air. The shockwave reverberated through the arena, setting off a chain reaction of gasps and cheers. My body moved instinctively, joining the dance of battle, though my mind raced with uncertainty. The spectators were a storm, their cheers rising and falling like waves, threatening to sweep us all away. I felt the grip of fear tightening around my throat, but I pushed through, fueling my actions with raw emotion. Each parry, each strike, was a battle against not just my opponents, but the shadows that clung to my heart. I remember the way my breath hitched when Lila stumbled, just for a moment, a flash of vulnerability that sent the crowd into a frenzy. I could hear them, the whispers of doubt mixed with shouts of encouragement. "Get up! Don't let them see you cry!" But I couldn't tell if they were urging her or me. The lines blurred. A sudden roar erupted, and I turned just in time to see Marcus fall to the ground, his opponent's blade driving deep into the heart of the fight. Time slowed, stretching out like taffy, every second a betrayal. The echo of gasps, the sharp intake of breath, the collective heart-stopping moment of realization, he was down. I felt my own heart fracture, a spider web of despair spreading through my chest. Lila's face morphed from fierce determination to sheer horror. I remembered her smile, the way she had trained day after day, pushing through the pain. This was supposed to be her moment, our moment, but the universe had other plans. And then it hit me, the pressure wasn't just on us, it was a tidal wave crashing over every dream we held, every aspiration we clung to. The audience, the spectacle, it all felt suffocating, a noose tightening around our throats. I could see the shadows creeping in, the fear of failure, the haunting echoes of past defeats. Each breath became a reminder that we weren't just fighting for ourselves, we were fighting against the weight of expectation, the dread of becoming a footnote in someone else's story. And just when I thought I could bear no more, when the world threatened to swallow me whole, the thrill of the battle ignited a spark deep within. I wasn't just a shadow, I wasn't just a whisper. I was alive, throbbing with the pulse of the moment. As I lunged forward, every doubt began to fall away. The crowd faded into a blur, their cheers merging into a single heartbeat. I could hear the thud of our bodies, the clash of iron, the sharp intakes of breath. And I realized, I was not just a participant in this spectacle, I was a part of something greater, a living tapestry woven with ambition, fear, and camaraderie. The fight raged on, the arena a whirlwind of emotions and chaos, but I felt something shift. The pressure, once a suffocating weight, became an exhilarating charge. We were not merely competing, we were battling against the very essence of our fears, our failures, and our dreams. With every clash, every slip, we were reshaping our narratives, forging identities amidst the storm. And as the dust began to settle, I found myself not just fighting against my opponents, but facing the shadows within, finding strength in vulnerability, power in fear, and, ultimately, hope within the chaos. The arena pulsed like a heartbeat, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. The roar of the crowd swells, a cacophony of bloodlust, echoing in the stone amphitheater, vibrating through my bones. I stand in the center of the arena, heart pounding, breath hitching in my throat, as the sunlight bathes the sand in a golden hue, almost innocent. But I know this place. I know that innocence is an illusion, and the sun only bathes the blood in a more luscious color. I remember the first lesson in survival, never let them see your fear. Marcus shifts beside me, a towering figure, his muscled arms, inked with fading loyalty to the Empire, tense, ready for what's to come. His eyes, dark and stormy, flicker with a blend of rage and panic. "Can you taste it?" he hisses, his voice barely above a whisper, yet it carries the weight of dread. The anticipation, the electric tension, sends a shiver down my spine. I close my eyes for a moment, drowning in the noise. It's a symphony of survival, each cheer, each jeer, a reminder that life is a gamble, played with weapons and blood. I remember the first time the gates opened for me. How my heart raced, the thrill of the unknown. But now, the thrill has dulled to a knife's edge, always threatening to cut deeper than I care to admit. I steal a glance at Lucius, a wiry man, too quick for his own good, flitting around like a shadow. He's always been the strategist, the one who manipulates the odds. "Remember, we stay together," he says, breathless, "a united front will intimidate them." But I see the tremor in his hands, the way he grips his sword, knuckles white against the leather. What good is a strategy against death? Desperation clings to us like sweat. It's in the air, thick and suffocating. I glance back at the yawning mouth of the gate, where the dark shapes of our opponents loom, like specters summoned from the depths of hell. They are the shadows of our fears, brutal, ruthless, hungry. I remember the first time I saw a man die, his last breath a whisper, a plea for mercy that never came. "Focus," Marcus growls, breaking my reverie. "Tactics. We need to survive this." A reminder that echoes in my mind, a mantra twisted by reality. He's right, of course. Survival is an art form, a twisted dance learned through pain and blood. Each fight, a reluctant brushstroke on the canvas of life. We've been trained to read our opponents, to anticipate their every move as if we can predict the chaos that unfolds. Lucius shifts his weight, his eyes darting between us, searching for reassurance. The way they stand, the way they breathe, it speaks volumes, he murmurs, his voice a thread pulling us together. Let's flank left, they won't see it coming. It's a plan born of desperation, but it's all we have. I nod, though I feel the weight of my own doubt pressing down like a leaden cloak. The gates creak open, an ominous sound that sends a ripple of fear through me. The sunlight spills in, illuminating our foes, grotesque in their glee. I feel the heat of their gaze, the fervor of their anticipation, and I think of the crowd, these specters of humanity, hungry for violence, for blood. I remember the whispers of the men before me, the crowd wants a show, make it a good one. The clash of steel reverberates in my skull as we charge forward. The air thickens, filled with shouts and the grunts of combat. I fight in a haze, time blurs. I am nothing but instinct, moving on a razor's edge. I feel the sweat pooling at the base of my spine, the adrenaline coursing through my veins, igniting every nerve with fire. I am alive. I am terrified. In this moment, I catch a glimpse of Lucius, darting like a wraith, his blade slicing through the air, finding purchase. He grins, a wild, manic smile that cuts through the chaos, but I see the fear lurking behind his eyes. I remember the laughter we shared in the training grounds, careless and fleeting. The bond we forged through sweat and blood. It's falling apart in this arena, dissolving like salt in the ocean of chaos. A scream pierces through the noise, a haunting sound that freezes my heart. Marcus is down, grappling with an enemy, his face contorted in pain. My world collapses in that instant. I can't breathe. Not him. Not here. I remember our midnight conversations, our dreams of freedom beyond these walls. Marcus! I roar, the sound tearing from my throat, raw and primal. I push forward, instinct taking over as I swing my blade, feeling the weight of his fate hanging in the balance. I am a tempest, a whirlwind of fury, but chaos feeds on fear, and I can taste it thick in the air. I see you, despair. I scream, a battle cry against the silence that threatens to swallow me whole. The fight rages on. Blades clash, and for every blow I land, there's another waiting to sever my life's thread. I feel the warmth of blood, my own, or my enemy's, it doesn't matter. It's a reminder of everything that's at stake. I remember the faces of those who didn't make it, ghosts watching from the shadows, urging me to keep fighting. Lucius, oh, Lucius. The way his eyes widen as he dodges a blow, dancing through danger with an elegance I envy. He's the embodiment of survival, he thrives in this chaos while I'm swallowed by the weight of it. I can't let this be his end. I won't. But the crowd roars, demanding blood, and every heartbeat echoes the truth. In this arena, survival isn't just a tactic, it's a desperate cry against the inevitable. And yet, there's a flicker of hope, a glimmer of defiance that ignites within me. I remember what it feels like to dream, to fight not just for survival, but for life beyond these walls. I charge forward, my resolve hardening. The shadows around me pulsate with energy. I will not surrender. I will not let the cries of the crowd drown out my will to live. Chaos reigns, but in this moment, amid the screams and the clanging of metal, I find clarity. The ground beneath my feet shifts, and in that shifting sand, I plant the seeds of survival. Each thrust of my blade, each calculated dodge, becomes an act of rebellion against the fate that looms large and insatiable. I will fight. I will survive. I will become the ghost that haunts this arena. And as I push forward, I feel the weight of memories, dreams, and blood binding us, Marcus, Lucius, and me, together in this fight for our lives, forever etched in the sands of history. The arena is silent now, its blood-soaked sands a stark reminder of what once was. I stand amidst the whispers of ghosts, the echoes of roars and cries that linger like an unshakable stench of fear. A chill hangs in the air, the kind that can freeze a man's soul, and I can feel it creeping up my spine like a serpent coiling around its prey. Freedom feels like a mirage, shimmering on the horizon, just beyond my reach. I remember the day I was freed. The sun was an unforgiving glare, illuminating the hardened faces of men who once fought beside me. My heart raced, the weight of steel replaced by the weight of choice. I could roam the streets of Rome, smell the sweet scent of fresh bread, hear the laughter of children, yet all I could think of was the arena, where I was forged, where I became something more than a man. Marcus, my brother-in-arms, was the first to step into this new world. I watched him, a wild flame flickering in the wind of uncertainty. "They'll love us," he said, his voice thick with pride. Oh, how I wanted to believe him. Fame, they said, awaited us, golden laurel wreaths, adoring crowds. But fame is a fickle mistress, and love, oh, it's a double-edged sword. The cheers can drown out the screams, but they can't silence the memories. He struts into the marketplace, and I follow, a shadow clinging to the walls. I remember the day he fought a lion, raw and savage, the blood splattering across the sunlit stones. The crowd erupted, hysterical in their delight, but I had seen the truth. I saw the fear behind his eyes, the flicker of doubt that whispered he might not walk away. And now, here we are, drowning in the accolades of men, but in the quiet of the night, it's different. A darkness lurks, a spectre that follows, a reminder of every life we took, every life we lost. "You're a hero now," they chant, but I see the cracks in his armor, the way his smile falters. They bathed once a year. So, yeah, romance was earthy. I crack a joke, hoping to lighten the weight, but it falls flat. I remember a time when we were not gladiators but boys, laughing beneath the stars, dreaming of adventures beyond the walls of our prison. I long for that simplicity, but the thrill of the arena calls to me like a siren song. The clang of swords, the roar of the crowd, it's intoxicating. Freedom feels like a cage, it seems to hold more chains than the one I escaped. As we wander through the cobbled streets, I can't help but glance at the faces around us. Some wear masks of admiration, others bear the scars of our past. A woman locks eyes with me, her gaze deep and piercing. She was a widow once, mourning a husband lost to the sands. I can't breathe. I know what we did. I know what we took. Her pain is a blade, and I am the hand that wielded it. "Marcus," I murmur, hoping to divert our path. "Let's go." But he shakes his head, his eyes dancing with a reckless spirit. This is our moment. We've earned it. Earned it? What price did we pay? The echoes of the dying haunt us, their voices a constant reminder of the blooded past. I want to scream, to cry out, but the words are trapped behind my teeth. Night falls, and the shadows grow long. The city transforms, filled with the laughter of revelers while I stand paralyzed in the moonlight. The ghosts gather around me, a chorus of the lost. I see them clearly now, men who once stood tall beside me, their dreams extinguished like flickering candles. The weight of their silence is heavy. The air grows thick with unspoken words, and I think of the choices we made, each thrust of a sword, each cheer of the crowd. It's all just a game, isn't it? But the stakes were life and death. I feel a hand on my shoulder. It's Marcus, his face alight with the joy of newfound fame. "Look," he says, gesturing to the gathering crowd. "They want to see us." But I am not ready to be a spectacle, a plaything for their entertainment. I long to strip away the armor of fame and just breathe. "We were heroes to them," he says, but I see doubt flickering behind his eyes now, a fragile veneer cracking under pressure. "What if they forget us?" "Forget?" I whisper. "They will never forget the blood." Moments stretch into eternity, and time feels like a cruel jest. We are caught in a cycle, the clock ticking down to the next performance, the next battle, the next sacrifice. I remember the feeling of the sand beneath my feet, the way it clung to my skin, a reminder of what I am. The crowd may cheer, but in the aftermath of glory lies a graveyard of souls, a testament to the price of survival. We stand there, two men carved from the same stone, shattered yet unyielding. The cheers rise again, but they fade into an unsettling silence, an acknowledgement of what we have lost. I turn to Marcus, searching for a glimmer of hope, a sign that perhaps this life is not just a series of blooded battles. But deep down, I know, this is our life now. A haunting melody that plays on repeat, a cycle of pain and glory. The shadows grow around us, and I can feel them closing in, an embrace that is both familiar and terrifying. In the distance, I see the arena, looming like a ghostly spectre. The sands are still, waiting for the next story to unfold. I know what lies ahead, the thrill of battle and the cost of freedom. As the night deepens, I can hear the whispers calling me back, an insistent pull, reminding me that the past is never truly behind us. Will I ever escape the shadows? And so, we stand, suspended in this haunting moment, the dawn of a new life just an echo away. The world is vast and filled with promise, yet the ghosts linger, tethering us to a past we cannot forget. Freedom is a heavy yoke, and the weight of our choices lies heavy upon our shoulders. The clang of metal erupts through the air, a deafening chorus of steel colliding against steel. It shatters the heavy silence like a scream in the dark. I remember the first time I saw it, a cinematic fight scene flickering on the screen, the visceral thrill of blood and sweat, the pulse of ancient rage coursing through every frame. The camera swings low, capturing the glint of a sword, the desperate eyes of a gladiator, Marcus, they called him, a name that felt as old as time itself. I felt my heart race, a syncopated rhythm matching the beat of battle. But beneath the spectacle lies a haunting truth, a bitter sweetness that clings to the air like the scent of blood-soaked sand. The audience roars, their faces lit with feverish delight, while Marcus stands poised for his life's climax, a man forged in the crucible of despair. I remember the way he grips his weapon, knuckles white, as if the very steel could anchor him to sanity in the swirling chaos. Every cheer from the crowd is a reminder of his servitude, each roar a dagger driven deeper into his chest. And then there's Livia, the woman whose heart beats for the man in the arena. In another life, they would have shared laughter over a fire, but now her love is a silent scream, a pain echoing in the hollow of her being. I remember her gaze, piercing through the throng, as she clenches her fists, willing the world to still. The camera pans to her, and I can see the trembling of her lips. A soft whisper, "Come back to me, Marcus." Each syllable is wrapped in desperation, a prayer to gods who have long since turned their backs. Her story intertwines with his, a tapestry woven with threads of hope and despair. She wears the weight of the world on her shoulders, a burden that manifests as a fluttering heartbeat. The city around them, Rome in all its grandeur, becomes a labyrinth of shadows and whispers, filled with people who only see the spectacle, the glory of blood sports, and not the lives behind the masks. They bathed once a year. I can almost hear her laugh bitterly, so romance was earthy. As the clang of swords intensifies, I feel the chaos seep into my bones. Each thrust of Marcus's sword is a cry for freedom, each dodge a step away from the darkness that envelops him. He's not just fighting for survival, he's fighting to reclaim his soul, a flickering light in a world where death is entertainment. Is this all I am? I can hear his thoughts, echoing like a distant thunderstorm. Suddenly, the crowd's roar shifts, morphing into a monstrous chant. Kill! 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 It's a hymn of bloodlust, a symphony of violence that drowns out the cries of the wounded. I remember feeling the pulse of this chant as if it were my own, a sickening rhythm that promised both ecstasy and despair. Livia stands rooted in her spot, a ghost in the flesh, her heart beating a mournful tune. What have we become? She asks the universe, her voice barely a whisper against the tide of screams. There's a moment, just a heartbeat, when everything freezes. The air thickens with tension, and in that breath, I see Marcus. His eyes widen, and I can feel his heart racing, a wild creature caught in a snare. Time stretches, and I'm suspended in the web of their fear and longing. It's just a game, they say. But for who? I wonder, the question hanging heavy in the air. And then, the clash, metal against flesh, the sickening sound of life extinguished in an instant. The crowd erupts again, a tidal wave of exhilaration, but I can see it in Marcus's eyes, the flicker of horror, the shattering of a dream. Livia cannot bear to watch, but she can't look away. You're a ghost now, she ponders, haunting this arena, forever chasing shadows. The battle rages on, but it feels different now. It's no longer just a fight, it's a visceral dance of existence, a storm of dreams clashing against the relentless march of reality. Each gladiator embodies layers of conflict, memories of lives extinguished, yet ignited in the flames of glory and spectacle. I feel it in my chest, a tightening, an ache that lingers like a phantom limb. I remember the stories whispered in the dark, tales of bravery and cowardice, of survival and surrender, emotions laid bare against the backdrop of blood-soaked sands. As the dust settles, a silence envelopes the arena, an eerie calm that follows the storm. The victor stands, chest heaving, a hollow triumph painted across his features. And Livia, eyes glistening with unshed tears, takes a shaky step forward, heartbreaking as she realizes she's lost Marcus to the spectacle. In this moment, all the laughter fades away, leaving only the raw emptiness of a love transformed into a memory, a loss entwined with the very essence of who she is. "Did they ever see us?" she whispers, the question spiraling into the void. The shadows around her stretch and twist, wrapping her in their embrace, and I can feel the weight of history pressing down on us all. In modern media, they glorify the gladiators, painting them as heroes of the arena, warriors of honor, but what of their souls? What of the ghosts that linger in the shadows, their stories lost amid the cheers? The camera fades, but the fight continues, a relentless cycle of glory and grief, the legacy of gladiators woven into the very fabric of our existence. As I reflect on Marcus, Livia, and the tumultuous world they inhabit, I can't help but wonder, will we ever break free from the chains of spectacle, or are we destined to remain prisoners of our own making, forever dancing to an ancient drumbeat echoing through blood-soaked history? The arena was a cacophony of roars, a living beast fueled by the bloodlust of thousands. I can hear it now, that overwhelming wave of sound crashing over me like dark water threatening to swallow me whole. The sun hung low, casting long shadows, twisting the faces around me into grotesque masks of anticipation. "Fight! Fight!" they chanted, a mantra that echoed in the very marrow of my bones. I was not yet a spectator, I was still lost in the labyrinth of my own fear, my hands trembling as I clutched the hilt of my gladius. I remember the taste of iron and sweat mingling in the air, sharp and metallic, grounding me in that moment. There was Gaius, his back broad and scarred like a weathered tree, his breath coming in sharp gasps as he prepared for combat. He was a mountain of a man, yet his heart quaked with the weight of his past. "They think us beasts," he would whisper between gritted teeth, "but we are artists of war." The ferocity in his eyes told a different story, a story of dreams crushed under the weight of a gilded arena, of glory turned to ash. Then there was Elia, her spirit ablaze with the fire of rebellion. She had a smile that could charm a stone, yet the world had carved shadows into her laughter. A gladiatrix, they called her, but she was so much more, a warrior forged in the flames of defiance. One day, she would say, her voice a fierce whisper, "I'll carve my name into history." But history had a cruel way of forgetting, didn't it? Each day in training was a dance with death, every clash of metal a reminder that survival was a fleeting victory. The training grounds were a hell of their own, a brutal ballet choreographed by pain. Steel sang against steel, the clash resonating like thunder, a symphony of agony and sweat. I remember the eyes of my fellow trainees, reflecting the flicker of hope and fear, mingling like ghosts in the dim light of the midday sun. "You're not just honing your skill," our trainer barked, his voice a whip crack, "you're learning to embrace your death. Feel it in your bones, feel it in your soul." I remember the time I faltered, the weight of my sword suddenly feeling like the world itself. I stumbled, and the laughter of my comrades rang in my ears, a mocking echo, a reminder of my fragility. Gaius stepped forward, his shadow swallowing mine. "You'll rise again," he said, voice low, "for every fall is a lesson, a whisper from the abyss." His eyes held a wisdom that belied his rugged exterior. I wanted to believe him, but the fear gnawed at my insides like a hungry beast. With each passing day, the training intensified, a relentless tide that threatened to drag us under. I remember the way the sun dipped behind the horizon, leaving only the pale light of the moon to guide our battered souls. In those quiet moments, Elia would talk of escape, of running far from the blood-soaked sands, her laughter mingling with the cool night air. "Imagine a place where we can be free, where we can be more than this," she would exclaim, and for a fleeting moment, I could envision it, a dream painted in vivid colors against the backdrop of our grim reality. But dreams, like the finest wine, often turn bitter. The day of the grand tournament arrived with a sense of doom hanging heavy in the air. The arena was a living entity, breathing in the anticipation, spitting out the echoes of countless battles. I stood with Gaius and Elia, our fates intertwined like strands of a fraying rope. Remember, Gaius said, his voice steady, we fight not for their cheers, but for each other. As the doors swung open, a flood of light spilled forth, blinding and beautiful. The roar of the crowd surged like a tidal wave crashing over us, a cacophony of bloodlust that drowned out reason. I stepped forward, heart pounding, fists clenched around my sword. Fear wrapped around my throat, a noose tightening with each breath. Elia's fierce gaze burned into mine, a reminder of what we were fighting for, what we might lose. The fight began, and it was a flurry of movement, a chaotic dance filled with the music of clashing metal, screams, and the breath of dying men. I remember the glint of the sun off a blade, the sharpness of a cry that echoed my own heart. I struck, I parried, the world narrowed to the point of my sword, and yet, within that chaos, I felt a strange clarity. Every clash was a heartbeat, every dodge a gasp of air. I was alive. But then Gaius fell, a dark figure crumpling against the harsh sands, and my heart shattered. I remember the moment his eyes met mine, filled with a mix of fear and determination, an unspoken plea that pierced through the din. Live, he gasped, a final command to a world that felt impossibly heavy. I could almost hear the echo of my own heart breaking as I fought, now not just for survival, but for vengeance. Elia was at my side, her voice fierce, igniting a fire within me as we moved in sync, two souls intertwined in battle. The clash of our swords wove a tapestry of fury and desperation. I remember the sharp edge of pain, a reminder that we were not destined for glory, but rather for the shadows that lingered just outside the arena's glare. The fight was a blur, a whirl of chaos and blood. Yet through it all, the faces of my comrades flashed before me, the laughter in the training grounds, the fierce glances shared in the moonlight, the dreams whispered in the night. The echoes of their hopes fueled my rage, grounded me in my purpose. But even in the frenzy of battle, I could feel the specter of despair creeping in like a thief in the night. I was not just fighting for survival, I was fighting against the very essence of what had become of us. Gladiators, yes, but warriors of the soul caught in a macabre dance of fate. As the final blow fell and the arena erupted into a storm of cheers, I thought of Gaius, of Elia, of the dreams we had forged in the fires of despair. I had survived, but at what cost? I stood there, heart pounding, a warrior reborn yet haunted by the ghosts of those left behind. And that silence that follows a scream, oh, how it lingers. It waits, it festers, a baying wolf in the shadows, echoing the pulse of a lost dream. The arena, once a place of glory, now felt like a tomb, a grave for hopes buried deep in the sands of time. The roar of the crowd thundered in my ears like a storm unleashed, drowning out the whispers of my own heart. Shadows flickered across the arena, dancers of death performing a macabre ballet. A gladiator fell, his blood painting the sand in shades of crimson. As the audience erupted into a frenzy, I stood frozen, my breath hitching in my throat, a spectator caught in the grip of history's darkest moment. This was no mere sport, this was life and death, a brutal testament to humanity's insatiable thirst for spectacle. I remember how Gaius, a young fighter with the spirit of a lion, smiled as he sharpened his blade. He was forever chasing glory, yet a flicker of doubt haunted his eyes, a whisper that perhaps this wasn't the life he truly desired. It was the kind of question that clawed at the edges of his soul, fraying the very fabric of his being. Behind the facade of a warrior, Gaius was a man, filled with fears and dreams that danced like phantoms in the gritty twilight of the training grounds. Each swing of his sword echoed his longing for freedom, a desperate cry muffled by the cheers for blood. Across the dusty courtyard, Lucilla watched him, her heart a wild creature caught in an iron cage. She was a trainer, but not just any trainer, she bore the weight of countless lives on her shoulders. In her chest, a storm brewed, torn between loyalty to the arena and her growing distaste for the violence that swirled like a tempest around her. She remembered her brother, once a glorious champion, now a ghost haunting the halls of her memory. She could hear his laughter, but it was suffocated by the reality of his fate, a glorified corpse lost to the games. Gaius, she called, her voice slicing through the air, sharp as the blades they wielded. You have to listen to me, what happens in that arena is not just a game. It's death waiting to happen. But he brushed her off, the laughter of the crowd still ringing in his ears, drowning out her pleas. He wanted to believe there was honor in the bloodshed, a chance for freedom, but deep down, the truth festered, a truth that twisted like a snake in the pit of his stomach. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that clawed at the earth, a reflection of the darkness creeping into the hearts of both fighters and patrons. In the distance, a new kind of whisper emerged, one that carried with it the promise of change. The philosophers were rising, voices that spoke against the bloodlust, words of compassion that ignited like wildfire. "Is this what we are?" they cried. Savages hidden behind the masks of civilization. Gaius heard the murmurings, but they felt like echoes from another world. In the arena, he was a god; outside, he was a man, uncertain and lost. Each duel became a battle not just against his opponent, but against the very essence of his own soul. The thrill of survival pulsed through him, but with each life taken, he felt a piece of himself crumble. The crowd's cheers turned into ghosts that haunted his dreams, their faces twisted in ecstasy over the lifeblood spilled. Lucilla, too, began to feel the tide turning. Every day, she trained the next generation, young boys and girls who gazed up at her with wide eyes, hungry for glory. But she could already see their fate, a future marred by the same blood-soaked history. "You don't have to follow this path," she urged them, her heart breaking like fragile glass. "You can find another way." The fire in her voice matched the one in her heart, but would it be enough? Then the day arrived when the arena itself became a battleground of ideals. The clamoring crowd, once a deafening symphony of bloodlust, began to murmur doubts. Questions bubbled to the surface: was this truly entertainment, or simply barbarism cloaked in the guise of sport? The ghosts watched, and the air thickened with tension. Gaius could feel the shift, the atmosphere crackled like a storm poised to unleash its fury. "Fight for your life," the announcer bellowed, but Gaius hesitated, the weight of his sword heavy in his grip. He faced a man, a fellow gladiator, eyes wide with fear, and in that fleeting moment, Gaius saw not an enemy, but a mirror of his own soul. They were both prisoners of circumstance, bound by the same chains, and he felt the echoes of Lucilla's words resonate within him. "You don't have to do this," they screamed in unison, a silent cry that reverberated through the arena. As the clash of steel rang out, the once thrilling cheers turned hollow, a cacophony of despair. Gaius, caught between the thrill of battle and the haunting memories of lost lives, felt the ground shake beneath him. The arena was shifting, morphing from a sanctuary of blood to a crucible of change. And in that moment, Lucilla stood watching, her heart pounding, feeling as if the world was teetering on the brink of something monumental. But with every heartbeat, the realization struck harder: the end of an era was not merely about the end of gladiatorial combat, it was a reckoning, the souls of the fallen demanding to be heard. Gaius lowered his sword, his heart pounding in rhythm with the crowd's shifting sentiments. Their cheers turned into a murmur of confusion, then uncertainty. This was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for their very souls. "Is this who we are?" Gaius whispered, the weight of history pressing down upon him like a heavy cloak. The shadows around him seemed to shrink back, as if the arena itself understood this moment could change everything. But would it? Would he have the courage to break free from the chains of tradition? In the heart of this chaos, Lucilla felt the fire of hope flicker faintly. Change was approaching, a spectre rising in the distance, but it would take more than a moment of clarity to dismantle the empire of bloodlust. As the crowd's voices ebbed and flowed, she recognized the power of this moment, their fears, their doubts, their hopes for something better, all woven into the very fabric of their existence. And so they stood, Gaius with his sword lowered, Lucilla with a heart on fire, and the crowd, no longer a faceless mass, but a sea of uncertain souls, each wrestling with the ghosts of their own desires. The arena was not just a place of death anymore, it was a crucible for transformation, and as night fell, it whispered promises of a dawn that could bring forth a new age. The shadows lengthened, the clock ticked with an eerie presence, and though the fight raged on, it was clear, this was not just the end of gladiatorial combat. This was the beginning of something new, an echo in the darkness, the fragile heartbeat of change pulsing through the very veins of Rome. The tension hung in the air, a promise of battles yet to come, both within and without.